What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this astrology course that I am putting on for you. It is the beginner to reader astrology course. We are going to cover the very basics to some of the most advanced things I do. I'm so excited to get into this first class and just this overall course with you all. We're going to cover a lot in, a pretty short amount of time when you really think about it. But I mean, it's really cramming a lot of information into a few hours every week and really looking at things from different angles, but also from traditional angles, and trying to piece all of this together, because it is this like ever expanding space that astrology is. And it's not so just this is one thing, like it's universal. Like it's like, think about the universe and the infinite ness that's out there. That is astrology. It is a Mandelbrot set. It never ends. The rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper and deeper. But I think that when we go into that space, we have to have this like foundation too. There's always got to be this foundation so that when we go deeper, we can, have that to really stand firm on, while also being mutable, while also being able to learn and take in different ideas and steps to build off of that foundation. So I hope that this class is exactly what people need, from whether they're just starting and getting into astrology, where we're going to go over the planets. We're going to get into charts later on in the course. I will make sure to teach everybody how to run a free chart, the software that I use for more advanced if you want to spend money, and everything in between. But the beginning is really going to be a high focus on the very basics. Before we even look at a chart, we just want to know what's up with this stuff. What is it all based around, which is the planets, of course. So that's where we're going to start today. And I'm super excited. So we'll just start getting into it now, because there is a lot to talk about. All right. So the planets, of course, that is going to be this main, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. I don't know. Maybe just one. We'll see how much we get done today. It's going to be interesting to see how just time plays into this 6-week course as we go through everything, and how far we go, and how well, saturated we get in everything, so that people feel like they're ready to move on to the next step. Some of you might honestly get a little bored in the beginning. Maybe you already know this, or maybe this is also giving you more tools to look at these basics to really start to build the story of astrology. So I think that's the main goal here too, is like the astrology is the story, using these energies, using these, basics, and then you start to really expand on them. So it does go very ninth house. Astrology is a very ninth house energy, which I'll go into that too, but it's very Jupiter, very intuitive, but it's also very mercurial. Astrology was originally traditionally ruled by Mercury, which I think it still does, because there is this alchemy to it, and being able to see both sides, the spiritual, the reality, all of these different angles, the inner, the outer, as above, so below. And then, of course, now the modern ruler of astrology is Uranus, which is, just takes it to these quantum new levels, if you really think about it. So, of course, these are the planets. We have the sun, we have the moon. Very interesting to think about the sun and the moon and how important they are. They are, if you think about from the Earth's point of view, they are these two bodies that, supposedly in astronomy are so far apart from each other. But from this vantage point, this reality, this planet, this realm, this plane, whatever you want to call it at this moment, they're the same size. And they are just on this perfect clock. They are the most reliable things in astrology. You always can know where the moon will be, like clockwork. It rules the hour of the day in many ways. It's like that ticking just hour of the month. The moon also does rule the month, moon month. And then the sun, of course, which is the day. And you know that every day that sun's going to rise, whether you can see it or not. Maybe there's a cloudy storm, maybe it's a sunny, beautiful day, but that sun's up and it's bringing this conscious light into our reality. But it's interesting to think about how perfectly symmetrical they are, to the point where we get eclipses with the sun and the moon, which exactly eclipse each other. These perfect spheres that are above us, that are very much this big part of course, who we are and what we're doing. We also have Mercury. It's the next planet that is definitely, it's so quick, right? You think about, if we're looking at a heliocentric view of things, we're talking about this bad boy's right next to the sun. Like, it is the sun's best friend. If you ever had that friend in your life that was just always like on your side, or a good way to look at it is like a dog, like your best friend, right? Always following you around. Like, you ever have like a dog or a friend that's just attached to your hip, like wherever you go, where are you going? Where are you going? That's Mercury. And that's a good reason why I think it was one of the, traditional rulers of astrology, is because it's always delivering this message from this God, this, as they called in the ancient times, Yeshua, like that was the sun. So there's these translations of like this very conscious light of the projection of the reality we see. And Mercury gave us an understanding, some kind of linear way to look at things. So it rules the mind, and it's the messenger, and it's communication. It has a lot of other attributes that we're going to go into too, but boom, Mercury. Venus, of course, the goddess. This definitely is about beauty. It's about art. It's about being very human too. It is, that aspect of reality. It's the first, like, oh, wow, there's actually really beautiful things here. Of course, it rules the other person, relationships. Mars, angry. Not always, but Mars is a very, very important part in astrology and how we go after things in life, and what drives us and what gets us up every day, and what it really is a conscious desire that we all have, and it's how we express ourselves and this identification of who we are. And it is very sexual too. Gets into, some of the deeper levels of that, but also, war, very masculine energy. Jupiter. I mean, Earth obviously is in between Mars and Jupiter. It's a weird place on Earth. I don't know if we need to talk about it. I think we can all kind of be like, oh yeah, that Earth planet, that's a weird one, especially in 2022. Jupiter is the biggest planet. It's going to be a sun someday. It's this gas giant, right? So it's huge. We're going to go into that much more too, but it is not as linear as Mercury, but it does have a lot to do with our mind, has to do with our beliefs. It is more of a right brain mind than the left brain of Mercury, the linear way. Mercury or Jupiter's more non-linear. It is the story and the belief. And of course, I really think Jupiter has a lot to do with channeling. It's this, bigger picture to everything, and what else is out there. Saturn comes after that. Saturn's got those sharp rings. Daddy Saturn. So Saturn is the structure of our reality. It's the last planet we can see with the eye. So all these planets that we've talked about, we can see them. Can see with the eyeball. So they have a bigger purpose in our conscious reality. Saturn, of course, deals with rules, restriction, but it's also where you can dedicate yourself, and it holds a lot of karma where we need to step up and, since in some ways become that boss in our life, where there's a lot of programming that takes place. Saturn also has a hex on it, which we'll go into. So it's very interesting. And of course, we'll go into the Greek mythology as we go too. Uranus and Neptune. Those are two planets that we cannot see. And of course, we're going to go into Chiron too, but Chiron's an asteroid, but I will definitely tell you how important I think Chiron is. That's coming later though. Uranus, ooh, the unique one, the different one. If you're not familiar with the way Uranus looks just as a planet in the astronomical view, it really sums up Uranus in many ways, because it does not do what the other planets do. It does not care. It does not follow the rules. It is the planet of liberation and really becoming an individual as part of a collective, and it rules this quantum area in space that is very angelic and can bring a lot of change. But Uranus does have also a sinister element to it where, oh boy, change can happen rapidly and in the blink of an eye and strike like lightning, and that can definitely shock people and be very, whoa, what just happened. Neptune is in astronomy the final planet because they took Pluto's planetary status away. But this is astrology, so Pluto is a big deal, and I even put it the biggest on here because as an evolutionary astrologer, which I'm going to teach about in this class too, oh boy, Pluto is, it is no coincidence actually that this 3D realm that we live in has made Pluto out to not be important, but yet at the same time, they're so interested by it. And they want to take these pictures and go check it out and see what's up. But oh, don't look at Pluto. I'm going to go into why that is. Neptune, of course, is, wow, probably the most spiritual planet. But you know what comes with that? A lot of delusion can come with that. Neptune looks beautiful. It looks like this big watery planet in space. And it's like, wow, that looks amazing. I would like to jump in that. But it's just gas. Don't jump in Neptune. But it is where we're ultra sensitive in life. It definitely is this higher channeling. It is very spiritually connected. It dreams, visions, ultra creative, but there's nothing actually there. So you have to figure out with Neptune how to make this sensitive channel and these dreams and these visions and this ultimate faith. You have to bring it into reality in some way, because if you just lose yourself in the nothingness, then there's no reality. And then there becomes the disillusionment that Neptune can bring, because you'll get so idealized in something that all of a sudden it really does become a mirage as you get closer to it. And it's like, oh, oops. Pluto represents a lot to me in the astrology I practice. It represents our soul. So the sun is more, to me, our fuel. I think it's the conscious identity of our soul, which is the sun, which is so important in astrology. Astrology is based around the sun, but Pluto has this deeper, it's Hades, it's the underworld. It goes so deep. It uncovers all the mysteries after a while, and it makes things, actually black and white, and can show a lot of truth up. So what does that mean? We'll go into that later, but it is also death and destruction. It is sexual energy. It is your unconscious, deep, embedded emotional desires. Ooh, I love Pluto. Gets into all that stuff that we're almost trained not, it's all the taboos, right? All the taboo stuff. Don't do this. Don't go into that. So we're going to look at that too. But these are the planets, and we're going to go through these. And the way I want to go through them with you is really slowly, but I'm going to go through them not in order from the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. We're definitely skipping Earth because we're all living that one out. But we're going to start with, because this is an astrology class, we're going to start with Mars. Because what does astrology start with? It starts with Mars. It starts with Aries. And I think even before we go into the planets, we should look at a couple other things too. Because it's important to know, this. See if I can find the right picture to show. Yes, this will do. But can I make it bigger? And yes, I will show it, I promise. Just got to go to my computer screen to show it. So this is important to know. I know we just talked about the planets, but it's important to understand how astrology works with it is the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn that do make the solstices, but the equinox points too. And this map kind of shows the constellations, but it also, is represented if this was North America over here and this was South America over here, and this would be the Tropic of Cancer up here and the Tropic of Cancer down here. But spring is really where it's at, which I know this says autumn equinox, so maybe I'll find a different picture. I'm not like super impressed with this one, to be honest, now that I look at it. Ooh, is this a flat earth map? I'll go into the way the flat earth does this too, but not right now. Anyways, it is this sine wave. And it starts, and pretend there's this line going right across the middle, the equator. And when the sun gets to that 0 point, that equator, that is 0 Aries, but also in Libra, where it does start to decline and go south. But it goes up to this top peak. And that's why if you're on the northern hemisphere, you get the summertime at this time that we're in right now. We're in Cancer season, which is the summer solstice. And that's why the sun is at the highest point in the sky on the ecliptic. So we get so much sun and it's right above us. So the shadows in the day will be straight down, which is, it very much starts with Aries. And then it gets to that summer in Cancer, and you'll realize that it's the cardinal points, which we'll go over too, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, that are where the seasons change. So it's very important. We're going to go deeper into this too, but I just want you to understand, this is why I'm going to start with Aries, is because everything in astrology follows this rhythm of Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. It's just this rhythm of everything. All right. So we're starting with Mars. Now, Mars is this conscious desire. It is identification. And I'm going to share some, keywords of Aries and Mars too for you all that I have from a glossary that I have purchased on evolutionary astrology, but it's just very well done. And you can get it from the School of Evolutionary Astrology if you'd like to. I definitely recommend it. I think it was like $20. It wasn't very expensive, but wow, it is just so much information. Goes into a lot. So I do want to say If you're interested, this is something that is very helpful to learn with. So Aries is the start. It is the initiation. It's Mars. Mars is Aries. It's the Greek god Aries. So we always start in astrology with this initiating force, this spring, this fire. It's powerful. This is where we really find what we want, these desires, this identity. It's the I am. Mars is that I am. Mars is this ball of just pure power. It's exactly what gets you up in the morning. When you wake up from your sleep and you're in Pisces land, dreaming away, it's Mars that comes around to start the new day, even in your life. Pow! It's that rush. It rules the head. It's just, that's the first thing. Pow! Eyes open, you're awake. And then it's that I am, of course, because it's about who you really are. There's only two planets in astrology that deal with identification, and it is the Sun and Mars. So it's very important to pay attention to what your Mars is in your life, and realize too that it does rule anger. It does rule freedom, independence. It is a very independent, planet. It's not so much worried about what everybody else is doing. It's much more focused on the desires of the individual. War, which we'll touch on Mars right now. From a Greek mythology perspective. Make this chat a little bigger so I can see it on my other monitor. Mars, Aries, the god of war. So I think when you think about Mars too, it's important to realize this masculine presence behind it. Now, we all have these masculine and feminine polarities in our chart, no matter if we're male or female or he, she, them, they. It really doesn't matter, what we are using that Mars to identify ourselves as. It's definition, which is masculine energy. It is power. If feminine energy is here to receive and to create, then the masculine energy, of course, is here to actually do something. So it's this warrior within us all. And it's this warrior within our consciousness, that war exists, that we have to fight in life. It just is a part of the reality. And I know that a lot of people, fighting never gets us anywhere. Fighting, don't fight. War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. I know that that's something we can all desire as well as individuals, but I think it's important to know that it's just one of those places that it's always going to have a place here in our conscious reality. There's always going to be an argument of some sort. There's always going to be a conflict between two people because two identities clash, whether it's with countries or with individuals. It's important to realize Mars is not going anywhere. Okay. So, think about that too. But think about that desire force within yourself and your identity. That's Mars. And to be, have that power within you. And, there's definitely some like more regal pictures of Mars too, which I think this, is a good one. You know, when Mars comes back from war, Mars isn't always just always fighting. Mars is enjoying, you know, time with Venus and enjoying, you know, other aspects too. Mars is the fourth planet from the sun and the second smallest planet in the solar system. After Mercury, it's kind of crazy to think that too. Mars is smaller than every other planet except Mercury. And I think they're discounting Pluto here, but it's interesting to think of that. And of course, Aries, the god of war. It's named because of its bold red color. Red can be that passionate color, that anger. I have a lot on that website. Wiki will. The Roman literature and art under the name of Mars, the character and dignity of Mars differed in fundamental ways from that of the Greek counterpart. So there's Greek mythology, Roman mythology. The area of Rome that took its name from him was supposed to have been dedicated by Numa, the peace-loving, semi-legendary second king of Rome. I like the Greek mythology better. Come on, give me a good little something for some. Anyways, he was definitely the warrior back then. He was the god of it. And it is this place in ourselves that we have to find that warrior mentality. We have to find that strength and to really know the identity of that. And when we look at pictures of it, you know, finding that passion and strength in our life and realizing that, you know, we do have to channel courage too, because there's a courage aspect to war. There's a courage aspect that's within all of us. Like we have to, in some ways, fight and identify and move. So that's the thing too. It rules Aries, which is cardinal. There's a initiation. Boom. It's like a jet airplane taking off. That it rules within us. It is loner. It can be lonely when you're only dealing with yourself. It is in opposition to Libra. Aries is. So Mars is also in that sort of opposing energy with Venus or with other people. You know, we can be a little isolated or lonely if we're just doing things by ourselves. So that's why we have to learn to, you know, merge our identities, which is where Mars also is the ruler of Scorpio. And it is about that passion, and there's an intimacy and a sexual nature to Mars too. It is definitely the planet that would rule sexual energy. Likewise with Pluto, the self, it has the violence, sexual instinct, impatience. There's not a lot of patience. You can't, you know, if you think about war and you think about Mars energy, you really can't hesitate. Like Mars is a place in our chart where we need to, you know, not hesitate as much. But that's where we'll get into, you know, planets through the signs and how that filter of a sign changes the dynamic of Mars. A good example of this would be Mars in Taurus, which we're about to have in transit next week. Mars doesn't want to be in Taurus because it wants to be impulsive. It doesn't have patience. But what is Taurus? Taurus is slowing things down. So we're kind of jumping ahead, but I'm using it for examples. You know, it's hard for Mars to be patient. patience is a virtue, they say. It's hard for us to identify and like be patient at times when, especially if we have this big desire, if we have this big, strong desire and we're fired up and we want to go out and, make things happen for it. Oh, but you have to wait till next week. Or sexually, if you really want to be with someone and you're so into them and I just want it now, but they're not on that level yet with you. And they're like, oh, no, we're going to have to get to different levels first. You're going to have to be patient and calm that down. Right. So this is Mars and what it does, in that conscious manner through every one of us each and every day. No matter how we play that out, there's always this Mars energy that is playing out. Intolerance for weakness. A strong Mars does not like weakness. I mean, think about if you're going to war, do you want your comrades to be weak? No, you want your comrades to be strong. So Mars is definitely the strength within you too. So it's definitely, that's where Mars struggles, is dealing with other people. Not everybody is going to be as strong as another person. Other people might be stronger. Learning how to find tolerance is important too. We have to figure out how to use all these energies together in a harmonious way, but intolerance for weakness. But it is instincts. There's something so instinctual about that. Just boom, I'm going to do this, and trusting your instincts. But, we can be so impulsive on our instincts sometimes that they can get us into trouble, or they can make some magical things happen in our life. It's very primal. We're not to the thinking part with the planets yet. Mars is just doing, and it is this survival nature too. There's something about Mars that it just has to survive, which is that warrior aspect. Like, just stay alive. I am a human. I am me. I need to stay alive. I came here to stay alive. Like Mars, a strong Mars is going to fight till the end to stay alive. Spontaneous enthusiasm. I think Mars can have a very good time. There's definitely pictures of Mars and Venus enjoying themselves. I think that's another, aspect too, if we're looking at Mars. There's an enthusiasm to Mars when it's getting its desires. Look at that. Loving Mars. Happy after victory. So when we have that victory in life, our competitive nature flares up. It's that Mars that wants to celebrate its victory in life. Kind of like the Six of Wands, which I'll teach a little bit of tarot in this class, but mainly astrology. But there's an enthusiasm to being yourself. And when you get that victory for a desire in life, that's also your Mars showing up, or just Mars showing up in astrology in general. Initiation, initiative. Again, it's Mars that initiates everything. Mars is the initiator in transits. When we look at astrology, Mars will come through and initiate a big eclipse or a big transit that came before it. Mars is the only planet in astrology that will actually get things started. If we didn't see something play out and it's like taking its sweet time, Mars is always something that comes through and just makes it happen. So Mars is the make it happen planet, of course, too. The expression of will. Got to go after things in life. Can be superhuman, just this amazing strength in whatever area of life you're trying to instinctively initiate, go after. It brings this strength to people in ways they didn't even know they had when they get into that primal sense or that survival aspect of life. Like Mars reminds me of the TV show Survivor. Like, you have to get into this almost like superhuman. I will survive. I will make this happen. I will instinctively figure it out. Special destiny. We'll learn that all the fire signs have a little bit of a special destiny to it. Mars is definitely a powerful one of a leadership role, pioneering, being its true self. There's almost like this idea, like Mars almost just really wants to consciously figure out who it is. Like, am I just this warrior? Do I just want sex? Am I much, much more than that? And it starts to ask these questions of I am. And, we start to desire to know more and more and more. Narcissism, Mars can definitely be only thinking about itself. It's the warrior, pioneer. There's the violence aspect that can come sexually if desires are, distorted sexually, destroy, take over, I don't know. Paranoia is an interesting one to be on there, but so I can just pull up here too. I actually don't. I'll be honest with you all. I haven't used the internet on this iPad in so long that I'm nervous to pull up the tabs right away because I have no idea what's on there. And I don't think it's anything bad because I only use this iPad really for like pulling charts up. I don't use it for anything else, but who knows? It'd be very embarrassing if there was something really, naughty on there. I'd have to explain my Mars or something. So if I'm going to use this for the internet, which I actually don't even want to because I took it off the keyboard. So we want. So that's a good look at Mars. And we'll go over, some more things with that. How's everybody doing? Oh, there's a question. Do I need to swap things around for the Southern Hemisphere? It's a very interesting thing. You don't have to swap things around. It's just as it's meant to be. It's just your winter is our summer. And I know that kind of changes the seasons, but there's still something about it just works. And that's a hard one for me to explain because I've never been on that side of the hemisphere. But it just works. Now you all want to know? It wasn't anything. It was just a bunch of tabs. But you never know. I honestly haven't looked in a while. Show me your bookmarks. All right. You guys are funny. Glad we can laugh in class too. So Aries, Mars, first house. These are some archetypes. So it is fire, it's yang, it's masculine energy. We're going to learn through this class that everything goes back and forth. So it will start out with fire, masculine, and then we're going to come to earth, which is feminine. So there's always this yin yang, this masculine, feminine, masculine, feminine. The houses do it, the signs do it naturally. So there's always this balancing act of starting something or masculinity and then coming to the next stage of it, which is the actual feeling and the receptivity to the things in life. It's cardinal. We're going to go over the modalities in depth after the planets and all of that, but cardinal is the initiating force. It's starting things. It's very Martian in itself, but it's also this go power. Like the cardinal signs have this ability to start with immense power and persistence, but they don't always have the ability to hold on to it like a fixed sign would. And they can have a stubbornness to it also, not like a fixed sign would, but a mutable sign can be less stubborn, except for Sagittarius. They're the most stubborn. I'm just kidding. That was a joke. The natural home is the first house. It's ruled by Mars. Energy represents the desire to separate. It is energy moving out of the center. Yin, female energy, represents the desire to return to the center. Aries represents the original anxiety of separation from the womb. You could look at Pisces as the cosmic womb, and we actually get birthed through the cosmic womb into this physical life, this I am, this Aries. And then as we start to grow up in our own journey through our own life, and we go through this natural progression of the zodiac, we get to this point in our lives where we get into that Cancer energy of our own. And Cancer would be like the conscious birth of maybe another life, and coming into Leo, which is fifth house, which is children. So you can see that like the water signs, and I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but I think it's good to bring up the water signs do deal with that birth energy, if you will. Pisces being like your soul getting birthed into reality. So Aries is the anxiety of that separation. Who am I? Why am I here? The sign that is on the first house, blah, blah, blah. We'll get into that later. I don't want to go too deep into all that. The emotional paradox of Mars is too much isolation versus too much social interaction. With loss of sense of self, we understand who we are by comparing and contrasting ourselves to others. So we have to learn to work with others, like I had mentioned. Also, if we think about Mars too, just as a planet, Mars is past the Earth in transit from a helio perspective. And it retrogrades every 2 years. So there are these big Mars moments every 2 years that really get, there's this cutting force. Mars is this kind of cutting agent, and those Mars retrogrades can be, a big cutting agent so that we initiate something new. It's like cutting the old out of this area and, initiating new energy. We'll go over Mars retrogrades natally as well, but it's just something to know that Mars retrogrades every 2 years. So I'll come back to this and let you guys know like how long it takes things to retrograde as we go. Mars retrogrades for a long time. It's about 3.5 months, 4 months. That's very slow. Very slow. It's the planet that takes the longest to retrograde. Every other planet retrogrades sooner than Mars does. Okay, I don't want to write on this anymore. Can we turn that off, please? Getting my iPad game worked on. It's not very good. Okay. So pretend for a second that this doesn't even say Taurus. We'll get into that too, and these archetypes and these, but this is, Venus that we're coming to. So we're at this point of dealing with, we've learned about Mars. We've learned about these different ways that Mars presents itself and these desires and this identity and this I am. And then we come to Venus, which is the next sign, which would be the middle of spring. It really represents the beauty of life. It really represents art. It's the goddess. So we start with this warrior, this initiation, but then we come to this receptive, beautiful, sensual energy, that everything can't just be forced. Everything can't just be about this like war and this desire and this, just crazy, unyielding, passion, or even just ourself. Because what is Venus too? It's relationships. It's the other person. So, and it's interesting to think about how Venus has the rulership of Taurus, but it also has the rulership of Libra. So we got to also remember too, when we're doing this astrology work, that because Taurus comes before Libra, that aspect of Venus is a little bit more important. You have to find that value, which is Venus. It is physical. It's money too. But even beside money, or beside the physical like goods of life, it is your self-worth, your stability within yourself. Knowing your value and your worth has this effect of attracting that in. And that's what feminine energy does. And that's what Venus is here to do too. It's here to be receptive and to attract. So where Mars is this initiating masculine, go get it, Venus is this energy within us all, and this planet that is about receptivity and knowing that we deserve nice things, knowing that we can be confident. It's about security. There's a secure aspect, but it is also very sensual. It's about the touch, the smell, the taste. The physical senses are so very Venus. So very Venus. I saw a question in here. Newbie here. I'm confused about the Mars retros. We're going to go more into that. I just touched on it just so that you guys knew Mars retro is every 2 years. I will go into Mars retrograde in your chart. We're going to go very slow. I'm already kind of going a little bit further beyond than I was expecting to be completely honest, but it's okay. I think that, we can always circle back. But as far as like in our charts or in transits or these, that's coming later. But Mars retrogrades every 2 years. And I just think it's important to know that Mars is the warrior too, even though we're on Venus. Now let's go back to Mars about this. Mars always wants to be pushing forward. And that's another thing about these retrogrades with Mars, and why it takes so long is it takes a lot to get that warrior to stop and turn around. It'll fight to the last very second and then finally be like, oh crap, I actually have to go back and hash out these battle plans. So that's one way to look at it. So you got to go back and make sure that your battle plan in life and your direction is ultimately going in the direction you want it to go. So, we can pursue things very strong for a very long time. And then we almost realize like, oh, is this actually what I want to identify with? And that's a way to look at, how we can use that Mars retrograde energy, and how to realize, oh, we can rehash the plan of the direction we're going, but it takes a long time. Everything else, Venus is the next slowest, which we're on now. Venus retrogrades every 18 months, which I'll write that down in a second, but let's look at Venus. Venus is hot. It's the second planet from the sun. So if you think about that, we wouldn't do so well living on Venus, because it gets pretty hot here in the summertime. Imagine being on Venus in the summertime, which brings that hot energy, that beautiful energy that you see in all people, is that Venusian quality, that like, oh, wow, that's hot. That's beautiful. That's, there's sexy, we're going to look at the Greek mythology of Venus, and we'll see like too, like how we used to, as a humanity, really value that feminine beauty, and the women's like natural ability to show that. We kind of lost that as a collective. We're kind of coming back to it now, though. It's interesting how cycles work. And it got like kind of demonized and overly sexualized. It wasn't even like a super sexualized thing back in the Greek mythology days of like Venus and Aphrodite. It was more just like, oh my gosh, this amazing, beautiful energy, like showing itself and being like receptive to what comes from that. But yeah, look at Venus. It's hot. It looks like a hot planet. It's not as hot as Mars. Mars is like hot-headed fire, but Venus is definitely hot energy, but about, also cooling things down and bringing that kind of beautiful energy and that kind of like, oh wow, that looks very, divine in some ways. Venus, of course, that second planet from the sun, named after the Roman goddess. Venus is the brightest star we can see in the sky at night. They call it both the morning star and the evening star, depending on where Venus is in transit. And if it has retrograded or if it's retrograding, you will see that when Venus is the evening star and you can see it at night, that means that Venus is on her way to a retrograde. And we're actually getting ready to have Venus pass us in transit, where Earth, I can show this actually, maybe easier. Where are you? Where did I end up putting that app? I let my son put a lot of games on my iPad. There. So we do want to know a little bit about these planets, right? Because that's what we're talking about right now. So it's important to realize that Earth is where we're at. Of course, Mars is past that, and Venus is the second planet from the sun. Mercury, see, tight messenger, best friend of the sun. But Venus is in between, so Venus's orbit moves faster. So the reason Mars takes a long time to retrograde is because we are moving slightly faster because we're closer to the sun in orbit, which I could probably just show you. Oh yeah, sweet. So you can see that would be a Venus retrograde. Venus is the evening star, evening star, evening star, evening star. And then we get the pass, and that's where we get 40 days and 40 nights without Venus. So as it transitions from this very bright, because it is this diamond in the sky, it is, it's amazing. It really does, you can see Venus right now in the morning. You can see all the planets in the morning. It's actually amazing. As I'm teaching this class, there is this very amazing alignment going on where you can see just for a second, right when before the sun rises, you can see Mercury, but you can definitely see Venus, brightest star up there. But then you're also getting, Mars and then Jupiter and Saturn, because we can't see Uranus and Neptune or Pluto. But this is why we get retrogrades, is because planets are passing the Earth in transit. Now, if you believe in flat Earth, which, I definitely think there's a lot of good backing around that stuff. I personally am not going to die on any hill. All I know is what I see in the sky, and those stars move and have patterns. And this is just a good way to visualize it. Is it the actual truth? Not here to teach that or tell anybody that. So if you like flat earth a lot and you're into that and you want to know more about astrology, I recommend Santos Bonacci. He's done a ton of work on it. But he's very much a flat earther, and he doesn't really give much, thought to people who think it's a globe. So take that as you wish, but very good astrologer that figured out very good systems of how that works. So there's just so many different ways. So we have to look outside at all these different ways. Anyways, a little off topic, but that's where we get retrogrades, is when planets pass the Earth. So once it passes, it becomes the morning star, and then it comes to make again. But look at Earth catching up to Mars here. Boom, got a Mars retrograde, which we're going to have this year in October. But that's why we get retrogrades. It's because from the Earth point of view, we see that planet stop and we pass it. And then once we get enough space away from it, it will appear that that planet starts moving forward from where we're at, and it'll look like, oh, but if you look up in the sky, it'll kind of make this this pattern. I probably shouldn't even be getting into retrogrades yet, but we'll talk about it with the planets as we go. But Venus retrogrades we get every 2 years or every 18 months. And it's 40 days and 40 nights of a Venus retrograde. All right. Venus orbits the sun every 224 days. So think about the Earth year. It takes 365 days for, the Earth to orbit the sun. So that's why, you convert that. It makes sense that every 18 months we get a Venus retrograde, right? And yeah, it's the brightest star. So it is this like beautiful reminder that there's beauty, Venus is beauty and creation. And there is an element of manifestation to it, the physical aspect of the relationship to Taurus, and that worth, and knowing what worth is, and knowing what is going to feel the best and taste the best and be the best, and what relationship is the best one to identify with. This is all the things that is very important about Venus. It's very close in size to the Earth. It's called the Earth's sister planet, where Venus is actually much bigger than Mars. Like if we look at a comparison. Kind of wild. Like Mars is like half the size of Venus. So it's interesting thinking about Venus being so close to the size of Earth. Because if you think about Taurus, it's fixed Earth. And we'll get into that more, but these are interesting things to think about, is how closely related it is. I know some astrologers that actually say that Taurus should be ruled by the Earth if we're using Earth as a planet, and Venus should just have rulership and dignity in Libra. But Mars, interesting. It's because it can fizzle out too. Like remembering that cardinal energy can fizzle out, so it can just come in like almost little man syndrome, if you will, and then fizzle out. It doesn't have the staying power. Venus actually does have more of that, of course. And course, a lot of beautiful art. And, and that's another thing that Venus rules is art. So it's no coincidence that there's so much art around the beauty of Venus and the feminine energy. And, always coming out of the clam too, which is always representing, to me, the Pisces exaltation, the cosmic clam, if you will. But there's just a lot of beauty. So when you think of Venus, you think of beauty, and in knowing the beauty within yourself, but also, seeing the beauty in other people, relating that and using that receptive creativity to create in life and to make beauty real. There's always going to be this, realness there. And so Venus does make things very real. So we get desires, and with Mars and Aries, and then we come to Venus and Taurus, and it's how we can have those desires and how we can make them real. But it always starts with the desire, and then it's the receptivity that can bring that desire to life, mixed with the action too. I don't use my iPad much except for charts for my horoscopes. So I don't know what's on there really. You probably don't believe me, but that's okay. 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 Back to this. All right. So Venus. There's a survival aspect to Venus. Can I run you, please? Thank you. Survival. There's a staying alive to Venus. Taurus really wants to find security. Venus really wants to find security. And that's like this feminine urge to be protected too. So there is that, like, how am I going to stay alive? That's very interesting that Venus does have. How am I going to have enough of my needs met? How am I going to have enough food? Venus does rule food too. Like I mentioned, the sensual aspects of taste, but it's very much food. Do I have enough food to survive? Do I need to make more money to get more food? Fertility, procreation, preservation. It really is this energy that wants nice things, wants to have security, safety, and beauty all the time. How can, Venus wants to really grab onto things. It's so much that it doesn't want to let go ever. And we'll get into why that is as we move forward. Self-resources, being able to create this security on your own is very Venus too. Yes, there's the quality of relating to other people, but there's the empowerment that comes through being able to rely on yourself and use yourself as a resource to create values, money, of course, physical goods. What are things worth in life? It's Venus that figures out the worth, and it even in Libra, it balances them out on the scales. Is this worth this? Is this worth this? So Venus is always trying to figure out the value, and it's trying to understand what that is and then hold on to the best things. Beauty, of course, as we mentioned. I think it's funny they put prostitution in here, which, yeah, that would be a little bit of prostitution, selling beauty for money. I know what this body is worth. If you want it, it's going to cost this much. Now, of course, we, look down upon prostitution in our society, but I guess that won't, probably because I took a picture afterwards. All right. Is what it is. I'm not saying prostitution's good, but there is that, element of selling beauty for worth, pleasure. I like that. Priestess things. And yes, absolutely, sexuality can be sacred. So self-sufficiency, security, it can be isolated. Not as much as Mars. I think Venus desires too much. Yes, it can want to do things on its own and be very self-sufficient, but there's another side, of course, because this is Taurus. There's the other side of Venus, because we're talking about Venus, that really, wants to include the other and, be diplomatic and find the middle ground and the balance and the harmony. So that's where we also have this give and take in life. There's a stagnation. Venus can be slow. Ooh, this bath feels good. I'm gonna sit in this bath for, I'm just gonna keep adding hot water. I'll let some out, I'll put some in. I'm staying until I'm completely a prune. This feels amazing. So there's the idea that when things are so good, we can want them for a long time and we'll take our time. So Venus is that also that ability to realize we don't have to be in such a rush. Mars, the first planet that we talked about, I'm in a hurry. I want things. Venus is like, oh, I got the things I wanted now. How long can I enjoy this for? Personal worth, self-worth, personal values, very important things. Self-esteem, confidence. Venus is definitely about the holding on of confidence. So when you have that value and you realize you can survive and you realize, you can take care of yourself, it builds a confidence. Or when you start making money, you start to get more confident. If you start to make a bunch of money, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I'm good at this. Like I have worth. I'm providing value. My self-esteem is good. Or with relationships, if you're with a partner and the partner, is, showing that you're worth something to them, wow, that can really boost your self-esteem. Or when other people compliment you on your beauty or your appearance or what you've, manifested, you can really boost that self-esteem too. Venus is the reason for that. Patience, where Mars has no patience, Venus does. Venus will wait for the best things. If it will not just pull the trigger on an impulse to go after something just because of some, desire. I'm just going to go do it. Nope. Venus is the opposite of Mars and will be patient. Poverty, because you don't have self-worth and you don't have value and you don't know what's good in life and you don't, relate well to with where society's at, and you're not giving it your all. You're not being receptive enough for good things. Poverty is an interesting one. You have to have Mars going, or if you don't have any desire and you're just trying to use this like patience in life, but you're like, I'm not going to get up and get a job. I'm just going to sit here and money's going to fall into my lap, or a relationship's going to fall into my lap, but I'm going to do absolutely nothing. There can be that feeling of poverty. Not everybody just gets things handed to them. Some people might be able to sit there and live that life, but not everybody. Venus can be very stubborn, especially for beautiful things, for amazing things, for the best things. It can hoard. It's interesting in numerology, if we correlate them to the planets, which I will go through with you a little later, but Venus is a 6. So 6 is very beautiful. It's very, finding balance and finding harmony. And it's artistic and creative. But wow, what's 666? The mark of the beast. Too much good stuff. Hoarding things too long or keeping things, that there is that like, whoa, this is okay. This is too much. I've held on to this. Oh gosh. So we can get to points where we do that with a lot of things in life, maybe relationships too. If we're talking about Venus. The body, Taurus definitely does. It also rules the throat, where Aries and Mars is the head. It comes next to Venus, which rules our throat, and Taurus rules the throat. So, but it's more than that too. It's the body, it's your self-image. Venus is definitely about the beauty in others, but it's also about the beauty in yourself and what's going on there in that physical appearance of yours. Pleasure, sensuality, materialistic, wants possessions, land, physical things. What else do I want to talk about Venus? Even more self-righteous than Leo Sagittarius. You guys are funny. So we will go on to the next planet, which is Mercury. Actually, would really like to. There. Mercury. Mercury, fast, 88 days around the sun. Mercury retrogrades every 3 months, which is 88 days pretty much. So every time Mercury goes around the sun, it's actually passing the Earth too. It takes about 3 months. So every 88 days, we actually do get a retrograde, and that is for 3 weeks. Oh, the dreaded Mercury retrograde. The dreaded Mercury retrograde. But, Mercury's quick. It definitely is dealing with our communication. It's dealing with our mind. It's dealing with our environment. It's all the things close to us. And it's important to remember too that Mercury is the smallest planet. And it's usually like little things. Little things can be important. Truths add up. Little truth, little truth, little truth. Belief. Jupiter, Sagittarius. But it is the messenger of our heart. If the sun is our heart and Leo and this conscious, representation of our soul, then Mercury's how we express that to people. It's how we, make changes in our life as we do grow and as we do understand more. So it deals with all of these very important things. It's also, of course, connected to Gemini. It's the twins. It can rule siblings, things close to you, cars. You'll notice during Mercury retrogrades, you will sometimes, car issues will come up. But it's quick, so passes the Earth. 88 days. Boom, passes the Earth. Passes the Earth. So you can see as Venus takes her sweet time every 18 months for a retrograde. Oh, another Mercury retrograde. Another Mercury retrograde. So that's why we have these Mercury retrogrades every 3 months. It's just because Mercury's ripping around the sun from a heliocentric model. So, of course, we're talking about communication. It is about learning. It deals with writing. It's about focusing to the, it's like the point of things. It's like getting to the point of what's actually happening. Instead of telling this big story, it's like, I'm teaching a class right now. We decided to come here to talk about all these different planets and to learn about astrology and to start at the beginning and go really, really deep into some bigger things. But it is that, you know, energy of taking information in and taking facts in, and, you know, it's also mutable energy. Um, and, you know, after, I think this is a good time, since we're on Gemini and there are 3 modalities and we've gone through it, that I'm going to go and touch on that with you now and segue over to that. The modalities. There is cardinal, there is fixed, and there is mutable. I'm gonna see if I can space this out better. So there's 12 zodiac signs. There are 3 modalities. And of course, 4 elements. So in each modality, you will get, of course, cardinal is Aries, fire. You will get Cancer, water. You will get Libra, air, and you will get Capricorn, which is earth. Cardinal, like I mentioned with Aries, Mars, this is the start, the initiation. It changes the season. Come into Aries, it is spring. Come into Cancer, it is summer. Come into Libra, it is fall. Come into Capricorn, it is winter. Fixed is the holding on. Like I mentioned with Venus, it wants to hold on to good things. There's a stubborn quality. It's, this is going to hold. This is it. I'm staying in this. This is what I want to be connected to, what I want to have in my life, what I'm emotionally into, what I love, what has value. And of course, it's Taurus, which is earth. It's Leo, which is fire. It's Scorpio, which is water. And it is Aquarius, which is air. So you'll notice that with the modalities, with cardinal, there's fire, water, air, earth. With fixed signs, there's one, earth, fire, water, air. So there's one of each of the elements in each modality. So the fixed signs hold on, they hold on, they got the staying power. There's a persistence to them, whether it's intellectual, whether it's about the stamina within you to keep creating and going and, you know, loving. You know, there's these fixed signs, and the fixed signs are very important. They also are in the major arcana cards of the tarot, the world card, the Wheel of Fortune. There's something about the fixed signs that are so important about humanity, and how we, you know, really have to know value and worth and have love in our hearts, and, you know, have a deep emotional desire to merge in life with other people or with something bigger, something hidden that we can't see, with Scorpio. And then Aquarius, of course, is, you know, friends and humanity and realizing how connected we are. And then mutable is the change. So where we start things and we hold on to things, well, if you think about the fixed signs, they are at the middle of the season. So it's the middle of spring, it's the middle of summer, it's the middle of fall, it's the middle of winter. You know, these are like we're here. There's no change coming in this sign. We are in the middle of the sign. We are in the start of the sign over here in Cardinal. And then mutable, we of course come to Gemini, which is air, of course. Then we come to Virgo, which is Earth. Then we go to Sagittarius, fire, and Pisces, water. So these are the signs that change. We realize that we started things, we held on to things, and now we're losing sort of momentum. A good way that, David Palmer, who was one of my teachers, of course, taught it was that it looks a lot like this: cardinal, fixed, mutable. And it's like we take off with cardinal, launching upward momentum. We're going, got to have all that force behind it. Fixed signs hold. We're holding the line here for what we value and what's good and happy in life. And then mutable is where, oh, well, looks like the season of life is changing. Looks like things are changing in my life. And I got to be able to come down and, make a change and figure things out. And, where are they actually going to get ready to start a new cycle? So jumped into modalities a little quick, but I think it's good to know as we're going through these and we get to, really we're paying more attention to Mercury, which is the communication, the writing, the speaking. It is the left brain. It is analytical. It's definitely dealing with, this is an iPen. I'm writing on an iPad. There's just fact and truth to that. Doesn't really take a whole lot of, it is what it is. You can get there with the left brain. Science, of course, would be more left brain, really like just, this is the facts. Like here, we're learning the facts about these planets. We're learning the facts that Mercury is the next planet from the sun and it's the smallest planet and it deals with our mind. It's these kind of things where if we go to the opposite of Mercury would be Jupiter, it's the philosophy, the intuitive nature of life, not just this sort of fact-based, accumulation of information and, sharing of that information. Duality. It is the first sign that we really come into, the first planet where we start to banter. It deals with the other person. Aries is very much about your identity. The Venus in the Taurus side of things is very much about your identity or your value. I'm sorry. Mars identity, Venus is your value, your worth. And then Mercury is like communicating these things. I have a desire. I want to teach a class. I want to go to the beach. I want to have a really nice house. I want to have a really hot partner. I want to have, these are the things that Mercury is in our life. Being able to realize that it's duality, but then coming up and realizing that it brings in that other, dialogue in it too, where someone else has a different truth. Maybe somebody else's truth is, I don't like the beach. I don't want to live in a house. I could care less what my partner looks like. So there's an opposite in life, or there's different information. Do people have different truths? That's one thing that Mercury is also, is every person has their own mind and is in control of that. And there is their own truth that goes along with that. So we have to be able to, communicate these things and try to make sense of what our beliefs and our feelings and our desires and our wants and needs are, and be able to express that and to understand that, wow, it's very interesting. Other people might not feel the same way or think the same way as me. So there's a dual nature, and it does, if we come down and we talked about Mars ruling the head, we talked about, that's Aries, Mars. We talked about Venus ruling the throat. Mercury rules the arms, comes into that dual nature of the arms. And there's two, and they go in different directions and they can do different things at different times, and right, kind of crazy. Scattered. Mercury can be all over the place. Our mind is moving so fast. And that's one of the things about Mercury too, is it's the fastest planet around the sun. So the mind is just always firing off. What is it like? how many thoughts do we have in a day? Like 20,000 thoughts in a day or something, like just randomly show up in our mind. We're all going through some scattered mind. Like yeah, some people can be a little bit more focused, but it's scattered. There's thoughts coming in and out. And sure, some people are better at displacing the crazy, whoa, they're not gonna just say everything that comes to their mind. But then there's other people that will. They'll get some crazy thought, blurt it out. Superficial, not my favorite keyword here. Literal for sure. You spelt that wrong. You used improper grammar. you know that's not the truth of how that's done. That's spelt this way. So there can be a literalness to the punctuation of life with Gemini, Mercury energy. Lies, the trickster. Mercury is the trickster. If you think about Mercury, of course, and we'll go and switch now to a little bit about Mercury. It's correlated with Hermes, which was the speedy messenger god in Greek mythology. Always had wings on his feet, just fast. It's quick. Gosh, that's the thing with Mercury. It's very quick. We can go through thoughts and things so fast, and it rules trickster energy. It's almost like that, not always lies. I know I put that on that, page that I was showing you, but there's jokes to it. There's banter. It's witty. It's fun. It's youthful. Mercury holds a very youthful energy. Really, these first three signs, especially going Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, they can hold that very youthful energy as they're the starts. It's the first quadrant of the zodiac. So, Mercury can have that sort of fun, playful, trickster energy. Like, I want to play a trick and see what happens with someone else. Like, ooh, will I get there? Will I get a rise out of them? You have somebody with, Mercury and Gemini, they might be very trickster. But it is that winged god that is the messenger of the sun. The swift-footed messenger and trusted ambassador of all the gods, conductor of shades to Hades. So that's the crazy part, right? Hades would be Pluto. So it's like, and Hades was the brother of Zeus, and they were, dealing with different levels as gods here. God of the underworld, god of all gods up in the heavens, Zeus. Mercury would go both sides. So Mercury is very hermetic at seeing both sides of everything. So that's where in our own minds, we want to be able to see both sides. And that's why it rules duality, because we live in a dualistic universe and we have to see the light, we have to see the dark, and we have to be able to alchemize that into an independent truth and into an independent environment that we want to be a part of. So, we have to remember, like, we have to talk about some dark shit sometimes. We have to, understand some of the things in life that we don't want to. We have to understand that death is part of reality. We have to understand that life is part of reality. Birth, death, everything in between, sex, rock and roll, all of it. Like, it's constantly going back and forth between all sides, all things. And, we have to be versatile. There's a versatility that our mind the mind's so powerful. It can be so versatile and so, able to go from one thing to the next thing, and it's intellectual, so it doesn't have to, and it's mutable. Our mind doesn't have to get so attached to things. It's actually like better to take the information, learn about it, go over here, go over there. Okay, well, I learned this, and then we don't have to attach ourselves so much to information, because information is just always going to change the older you get. There's something that's so it just always is going to change. Truths change. Facts change. They'll get disproven. Science will get disproven. Things will change. So it's just knowing that, like, Mercury in our mind is really dealing with, that part of our energy is like, things change. Can we adapt? There's an adaptability to Mercury and to our mind too. He is said to have invented the alphabet. Of course he did. And to have taught the art of interpreting foreign languages, speaking. His versatility, sagacity, and cunning were so extraordinary that Zeus inevitably chose him as his attendant. When disguised as a mortal, he journeyed on earth. Hermes was worshipped as god of eloquence, most probably from the fact that in his office as ambassador, this faculty was indispensable to the successful issue of the negotiations with which he was entrusted. Okay. But yes, Hermes. A lot of different depictions of Hermes in Greek mythology. And of course, there's also the Egyptian god that was, Thoth, that's related to Hermes as well. And then Hermes Trismegistus. There's a lot of different versions of like sort of this energy of Mercury and the god of Hermes that has incarnated on earth to really, a great teacher and scribe from the heavens. So there is that too. But yeah, Mercury. Alchemy. If we look at alchemy, because we're talking about Mercury and how Mercury is a very key role in alchemy, of course, I think that it's important to touch on that. Alchemy is an ancient branch of natural philosophy and philosophical and photoscientific tradition that was historically practiced in China, India, the Muslim world, and Europe. In its Western form, alchemy is first attested in a number of pseudepigraphical text written in Greco-Roman. They called it quicksilver too, which is very fitting in terms of Hermes and Mercury and alchemy and quicksilver. And of course, they use the glyph. The planet's glyphs are very alchemical. Of course, lead is Saturn, silver is the moon, air. You're probably familiar with seeing some of these. Alchemy, which gained significant popularity in medieval Europe, is the precursor to modern day chemistry, but it used philosophy. So that's where, I feel like we, as a culture, kind of lost the alchemical process. Is we lost the philosophy and the connection to the divinity that alchemy presented. Because, right, if you think about the main thing of alchemy, it was always, turn lead into gold, right, which was spinning around with Mercury. And they would use that in the process, but that's really a metaphorical thing to me. I mean, I do believe that it can be done, but I'm saying if you think about lead to gold, if you think about Saturn being lead, right? We just saw Saturn lead, which is this physical reality that we're born into. And then you look at the sun, which is gold. So it's turning lead to gold, would be really finding your light and your sun, and really finding that worth and that light within you is that's actually that's the alchemy. It's realizing that we're not just this worthless pile of skin and bones, but we're connected to so much more, and we have this purpose as souls here, so you start to alchemize your own body. I think naturally, I think a lot of people do, by finding and understanding their self-worth and learning more truth about themselves. That's like part of the natural sort of alchemical process in our journey, especially, for the spiritually like awake people, if you will, you really start to alchemize your truest self, and turn a lot of the lead in your life, the heaviness, the weight, and the struggle into positivity and gold, and that was lessons, and that they had value, and that they were part of the process. So Mercury is very important, and another reason why it is the ancient ruler of astrology. Light, outline, colorable, different ways to put it, but trickster. Opinions. Gosh, everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a thought that comes up. I think. But that's how we come to the duality and find the debate in the matter. Is it takes people to have conversation to come to a truth on the matter. I don't think it was one person that just said, I'm going to call this a table. I think they, somebody made it and they were like, what do you think? Like, we can set things on this thing, and I don't know, I call it this. And eventually they probably came to some understanding. It's a table, back in the day. Short-term memory, definitely quick stuff. Not long-term memory per se. Mercury's going through thoughts so quick that what's the quickness like? What's the street smarts like with Mercury? It's just like a boom. Oh, I know that. There's something too about Mercury where if you have a really strong Mercury, you learn things faster. If you have a Mercury retrograde or a weak Mercury or a heavily aspected Mercury, you might take more time to learn things. You might have to really saturate yourself in information to learn or to remember things. But, other people have a really good Mercury in their chart, well aspected, well placed. They're just sharp as a tack, and other aspects that go into that too. But, everybody's a little different on how we use our mind. And, Mercury definitely does deal with knowing things, and the quickness of knowing, and the memory that can come up really quick. Changing of viewpoints, fluctuating viewpoints, rationalization, siblings, twins. Logic is very mercurial. Intellectual, doubting your mind can be very mercurial. Having so many thoughts, like, am I thinking too much? Always changing. Mutable, as we talked about with Mercury. Teacher, scribe, as we talked about with Hermes. Short journeys, short travel, cars, bikes, skateboards. These are very mercurial things. You get on a plane to travel across the world, you're definitely looking at Jupiter. But short journeys and, having control, doing it with using your mind to control a vehicle is very mercurial. But just being a passenger on a bus, not so much. You're kind of on the journey, and whatever happens, happens. Or even being a passenger in a car, it's a little different. It's very mercurial when you're actually stimulated by the process of what you're doing. Look at, especially these newer images, I just think, like, in our consciousness, whether this is actually what the planet looks like or not, like, again, I'm not here to say, but wow, does that remind me of our minds? They're crazy, they're beautiful, they're so unique and different, and like, just there's different things firing off all the time, and and things are different, and there's different thoughts today, and there's different thoughts later, and it's like, it reminds me of that, like, the brain firing in a lot of ways. So it's very interesting. Like, that's our mind, right? Like, it's blah! I like this one too. But yeah, there's just so much going on with our minds that it's very fascinating. Gosh, I wonder when these came out. I haven't even seen these pictures yet. Crazy. Conscious understanding. Like, look at the older, we always get these new updated pictures of these planets, and like, it just kind of shows where things are evolving. Like, look at, so it's like this, like, cosmic, it's almost like our mind is actually evolving, like, in my way. There we go. Mercury was, this was a, there you go. Like, let's just get to business. Let's learn the school. This is what you're taught. This is what you need to know. This is how you speak. This is how you write. And, the other end was always Jupiter. Oh my gosh, it's hard to type with my keyboard over here. Get my fingers in the right spot. But Jupiter's kind of always just been like, oh, whoa, what's actually going on here? And of course, the more we get pictures of these planets, the more they're evolving. And Jupiter's always been kind of like this, like, psychedelic trip in some ways, like, whoa, a lot going on. Look at these different layers and it's abstract. Where Mercury was like, meh, kind of plain. But now we look at this new sort of way of looking at it, which I think is very interesting because of this, the mind is definitely firing in ways that it didn't, I would say conscious for people in the collective, we're firing at a whole different realm than we were in the past. So it's almost as if even our linear mind is starting to understand quicker on a more cosmic, non-linear basis. And I've never had that thought until this class. So that's part of how this is going to go is, I'm going to learn things too and come to different, start using that in my own work. So pretty cool stuff. So we will move on from Mercury to, guess what comes next? We're doing the moon because we're going in order, of course, of really the zodiac, but it's the houses, it's the natural progression of life. And instead of, this heliocentric or just the scientific view or sun, or start with Pluto because I think it's most important. Like, I am going from the start. That's how it's just gonna go. Well, the moon does rule Cancer. It is very emotional. Can rule, of course, our emotions. This is definitely a lot about our feelings. The moon is our personal life. The moon changes constantly. So even though it is in rulership of a cardinal sign, Cancer, it's always changing, and our emotions change fast. The moon changes signs every 2.5 days, goes around the earth in 28.5 days. So there is this just constant waxing and waning of emotions in our personal life and feelings, and dealing with home life, and it can deal with the mother energy and the womb. It's also very connected to actually our ego on a way that only we understand. Not everybody sees the moon in you, but it's something that you feel, and it's what you would kind of be like, oh yeah, this is more what I am. Maybe not always, but I think for a lot of people it's more of that egoic understanding of what you actually feel that nobody else will ever see or know what that's like. So it has a more intimate connection to the ego. The moon does. Childhood environment. The moon definitely does deal with that kind of energy. It's always pulling things up like the ocean, pulling things away. Of course, it deals with mother energy and the home life. So that environment as a child plays in too. Nurturing. There's a element around the moon that wants to be able to take care of itself, but also wants to be able to take care of other people as well. The home life is connected to the moon. The foundation, your roots, is in the moon. I also think the moon is like the PhD in our life of, really kind of what we come into this life with, really having a pretty solid inner working of. Just something that we kind of came in with this like, oh, yep, graduated that class. All right, how do I then use other energy in our chart to consciously kind of bring that out? It's security, protection, the mother, family, ancestors. It's all about the inner. That's the thing about the moon too, especially in our natal charts, is it really is just the inner. People don't see your moon. Can't really like walk up to someone and be like, oh, you're an astrologer? Like, guess my moon. Like, I don't know what's going on in there. You look like a Taurus, but who knows? It could be in Sagittarius for all I know. It's really this inner thing that's going on. Needs, I think emotional needs, are very important. We all have some emotional need for security or for, romance or relationship or a job or a career. Like everything kind of comes from this base of this moon energy in our life, which is of course connected to Cancer. Emotions, the self-image. The moon is, exalted in Taurus, which we talked about a lot of that like self-image stuff and self-worth stuff with Venus and Taurus and the Taurus side of Venus. The moon has that too, because we can get very emotionally tied up in a lot of our self-image, or, not feel comfortable in our own skin. There's something about the moon that is like, you really need to feel this part of your life so that you can find comfort through change and through, actually instability. Like there's not a lot of stability with the moon. One minute it's waxing, the next minute it's full, and it's like, oh my God. And the next minute it's waning and it's starting a new cycle. And okay, here we are. So, being able to really see yourself on the inside out is very positive when dealing with definitely the moon and all these emotions. Touchy, subjective. I'll touch on gender roles later. It doesn't really correlate with the moon, but I'll tell you why that's in here. It's very interesting. The moon. The moon. It does not retrograde. As most of you know. Could you imagine if the moon retrograded? Like we all trip out on a Mercury retrograde 3 times a year. David. Hold on 1 second. Hello, sir. Teaching class. Want to say hi?
What's up, everybody? You have a good teacher.
You on your way in? Oh, the golden yods might come. They might come a couple weeks from now. We're just talking about planets.
What's Brian's favorite planet? What is your favorite planet, Brian?
Uranus.
Interesting.
Uranus. Yeah. I have a very Uranian life going on inside of me.
I'm sure you can guess what mine is, which would be the lower version of the Uranus.
I think it's Mercury. 100% Mercury.
Correct.
Boom.
That is my favorite planet.
See, the 2 astrologers like Uranus and Mercury, makes sense. All right.
Especially if I look at somebody's chart, or Mercury's the one I always look at first for myself. Like if I'm looking at somebody like, what's up with this person? There you go. Oh, that's the Mercury.
What's going on with that mind? What's going on there?
Yeah.
It's important.
Anyway, have a good class. I'll see you when I get there.
All right. I'll be done in a couple hours. Bye. Well, that was fun. Class gets to Get a little David Palmer. We all love a little David Palmer. Why not? All right, the moon, no retrogrades. Could you imagine? I was talking about how Mercury retrogrades every 3 months and people lose it. Mercury retrograde. I'm losing my mind. Those are these little things in my life are crazy. Oh my God, if the moon retrograded once a month, because it passes, passes where the sun's at once a month. Oh my God. All of a sudden it starts moving backwards and our emotions are just like, anyways, thank God the moon and the sun don't retrograde. It does, constantly change though. And in some ways there is something about that new moon that does it is that resetting and that new energy that, kind of when we get retrogrades and transits, it does kind of bring that, that the moon kind of just naturally does go through, but no retrogrades. It does not move backwards from our view, only forwards. We would be a hot mess as a collective if that moon started going the other way in the sky. What the heck is going on up there? It does not. It goes around the zodiac and around the earth in 28 days. A little bit, maybe like 28 and a half, like, right around there somewhere. But you'll get those new moons right around 28 and a half days every month. The moon does rule the month. That's why it's moon does rule the month. That's why it's month, moon, and lunar cycles. So really, like, astrology is showing that every time we get a new moon, we're really now Cancer season started on June 21st on the solstice, but getting that new moon on the 30th, or was it the 29th? Boom, we're starting that lunation in that sign, and it really does kick things up full speed. So knowing too that the moon does in transit like really get us into the sign when we get a new moon. What else about the moon? I think, it's interesting to think about the moon just at a different sort of perspective. What is the moon? Like, we're going to kind of get a little philosophical. Is it just a rock that floats up in space? Is it just sitting there, not spinning like everything else that seems to be up there in that sort of astronomical view? We only see the same side of it. Now, sure, we won't see the same side of it the whole time because we do get these waxing and waning phases of the moon. But what is the moon? It's a very interesting thing. So I guess I'm not even going to teach about what I think it is, but what do maybe what do you think it is and what's up? Why is it just sit there? Why is it so fixed and staring at us with one face? Is it a reflection? I think the moon can definitely be a reflection of our inner world. So maybe if we're looking at the reflection of our inner world, if as above, so below, which is very astrology, right? And alchemical, hermetic, maybe, just maybe that moon is a reflection of whatever we're on. It's good to ask questions. Next up is Leo. Oh yeah, that's just a picture. That's not this. The sun. The sun is the next planet. It is the ruler of Leo. It is our heart. It is this conscious fuel for us in this life. The sun is so important. It really is, a key ingredient in astrology. It's really what it's all based upon, especially from the heliocentric model. It is the center of attention. Everything is revolving around the sun. It is this nucleus of existence. If everything is an atom, as they used to say in ancient Egypt and old alchemy and hermetics, it was all is atom, which was really the name for God back then, the one sort of creator of existence. So it also is very closely related to atom, which is this nucleus with electrons Everything's spinning and working in harmony around this core, this center, which is the sun. So the sun is where you are really coming in. That is your identity. Some people don't like their sun sign. They want to relate more with other signs in their chart or their rising sign. The sun is really what you came here to actualize. It's what you came here to create. It is creative self-actualization. Where your sun is the greatest fuel. There's some tricks in astrology that a lot of people will talk about too. It's like if you're ever having a hard time in life, go back and do your sun sign. You will find fuel there. And we'll talk more about, of course, how to do the sun sign and the house that it's in and what's happening with that planet in charts. But how do you get back to yourself and your center? If the sun is the center, it is your center. And you need to figure out how to create based upon that. It is the king and the queen energy. Everything revolves around that planet. It is the center. So you got to, realize too that you are the center of your universe, your, solar system. There are moving parts going around you all the time, but you have to be that, solid regal force in your life of, what you're really identifying with and what you're putting your energy and passions into. Rules power. You have so much power where your sun sign is at. People don't even know. You might not even know. I don't really resonate with my sun. It's also the sun's very important for sun sign horoscopes. That's kind of a lost art. I will teach that more in this class as well. It does deal with art and drama. It's really creative energy. There's something that's so creative about the sun. And I think if you think about the sun in our life, it rises up every day. It's very dark at night. We're lucky to have lights, and there are stars that help out a little bit too. But, it's very hard to create when you can't see. There's something about the sun that shows up and gives us the ability to really see and create on a day-to-day basis. It lets us integrate to the things that we can see and to the projection of life that is coming at us. The sun's like a great projector. We get to turn the lights on and see what we can integrate into today, what we can identify with, and what we can, go into that's fun. And, what do we really want to do that is love? It's a purpose. The sun definitely does deal with a purpose in life. Where your sun's at is where you have purpose. If Pluto to me represents the soul and, sort of what it's been trying to do, it needs that conscious, light of the sun to actualize that purpose, which would be creative self-actualization of a soul desire. Oh, the sun could be where you're a little full of yourself. That's more for Leo energy. Subjective awareness. I think that that's good too, being able to be very aware of the self, being aware of, what you're focusing your intent on in the moment. That's where maybe people think that, Leo energy is too self-absorbed. Well, it's very aware of itself because it's meant to be. You should be more aware of yourself in your own chart where your sun is. Why, we need to be more aware of that. But say you have a sun in Libra, right? That's where the sun's at fall. It can be much more, hyper focused and aware and creating this sort of actualization of the other and the relationship and, different things that aren't coming back actually to that self, that subject, where also the opposite of the sun would be Uranus, Aquarius, and that's very objective awareness. That's, whoa, this is what the world is aware of, and not focusing on its, subjectiveness. A lot of creativity, again, is about where the sun's at. That's where you can really be an artist in your life, and really, project the portrait into existence by actually fueling it. It is your fuel. Inflation, positive or negative. Involvement, approval, exhibitionism, applause. Oh yeah, the sun. People want to applaud. Where your sun's at is where you can get a lot of recognition. Think about it. Everybody sees the sun every day. Where your sun's at is where you're here to get that recognition, being noticed, fame, romance, creativity, child prodigy, artist. There's a risk-taking thing with the sun too. The sun does want to take risks. It wants to take risks to illuminate that area. It's the sun's not scared. There's a sureness to it, a regalness, a fixatedness that is about the experience of the self and what's going to happen there. And, things don't happen unless you take a risk. It's the inner child too. The sun definitely is where you can feel like it can actually be more fun if you're doing your sun sign. It's probably an area in life where wherever your sun's at, you can definitely find a lot more fun and enjoyment than you think. There's a fuel there to it. It feeds your soul and illuminates a path when you're doing your sun. Going back to this, there's a lot of things in this going around the sun. Boop. You can't really see it from here, but there, everything is going around that sun. Life is moving around you, but you are the center, and that is the sun. So remember your center, and remember that the sun is a very vital aspect in that. The sun, just for fun. It's big, huge, right? It's very interesting. There's a lot going on with the sun these days. Sunspots, solar flares. I mean, this thing is pretty much, it is a little out of control. If you think about it, like, what is going on with this big thing? It did what? What? This gives us life. we wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for this. So think about that too. Your sun in your chart is, you wouldn't even be here without that sun in your life. And that's a big point where you need to create. Yo, be that sun, the cool sun. Another perspective is sun, earth, size comparison. Oh yeah, it's a big sun. I mean, Jupiter is ginormous. Saturn's big too. Uranus and Neptune are big. Look at these little marbles. So, that's how big of a personality you can have with where your sun's at. It is definitely if Aries is the personality, if Aries is the identity, then the sun is where you realize how larger than life that identity can be and how much is possible if you fixate and hold and know who you are and do what really lights you up. It's heart too. It rules the heart. If Cancer rules the breast, which is the moon, which is the sternum, the breast, then what does the sun rule? It rules the heart. So, a big heart can go a long way too in this reality. It can conquer all things, and the sun also rules love. So think about how powerful love is. If love is Leo and love is the sun, if you have that in life, and especially an unconditional love, you think you think Saturn's got shit on that? No, definitely not. So it's important to realize that with the sun as well. And we'll go more into that in like houses and stuff too, of like, learning how to use it, I guess, for a purpose. Next up is actually Virgo, but we've already covered Mercury, so we're gonna skip that. And we've already done Venus, which brings me to something I actually want to show, is how cool this all works actually. Is so what we just saw was we went Mars, and we went around the zodiac kind of in order, but we reached this natural progression too, where certain planets come back into play when it comes into the signs and the houses. So it's this macrocosm, microcosm. So it is this king and the queen that sit on top, Leo and Cancer, and then they both split off to Mercury each way, Gemini, Virgo. And then you get the Venuses, which is Taurus, Libra. And then you get Mars, which is Aries and Scorpio. And then we're going to come into now the next two planets on this inner spectrum, but it is Jupiter and Saturn. But you'll realize, yeah, Jupiter has co-rulership in Pisces, ruler of Sagittarius, and then Saturn, ruler of Capricorn, co-ruler of Aquarius. So, it's interesting, right? When you think about it this way, I think this is very, interesting, right? Because if we start with the sun, boom, sun, Mercury, Venus, it goes into this involution and kind of goes into the underworld, and it gets more serious and has to learn things and gets wise, and oh, we go out to the far reaches, and then we start to boom, get that initiation back into evolution of more of the story of who we are, what we value, and how to feel secure. So it's just very, I don't know, something people might want to look at. But it's a good way too when we're start getting into things like essential dignities. This kind of a chart, which I can clear for you in case you want to take a screenshot of it or something. I'm sure you could find it online somewhere, but you could take a screenshot if you wish. It is very nice for essential dignities because you start to see like, oh, sun and the moon, rulers of Cancer and Leo, and then you get into the Mercury ruled signs of Gemini, Virgo, the Venus ruled signs of Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, Aries for Mars, Sag, Pisces, Jupiter. It's just an easy way to look at it, and really it does go Aries 1. Oh, can I write, please? No. What? There. 2 for Taurus, 3 for Gemini, 4 for Cancer, 5 Leo, 6, 7, 8. So, you can just kind of start to see how even if you put Aries at the beginning or whatever the case, it doesn't really matter. Everything splits off of the king and the queen and then goes down in order. Mercury. And it's so interesting too, because it does go in order in the heliocentric, right? Not the moon per se, because that's with Earth, but it does go Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, all the way out to the outskirts. So interesting to note on that. So it's going to bring us to our next planet, which is Jupiter. Jupiter is absolutely ginormous, like I showed with that picture of the sun. But it is the ruler of Sagittarius, and it's another one of these mutable energies. It deals with our beliefs. It retrogrades every year. It is going to retrograde about, I believe it's every 7 months. It's about 7 to 8 months, depending, but it retrogrades therefore for 4 months, 3.5 to 4 months. And it's very interesting when you get into these outer planets, especially with Jupiter, Saturn, and maybe I'll show an astrology chart for the first time in this class right now, just to kind of show this perspective. It's just an easy trick, and I'm just going to show it to you now. You get planets, the outer planets. So we dealt with the personal planets, all of those so far. And now we're on these outer planets, which anything past Mars is really considered an outer planet. Now there's like the outer outers, which is Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. But, Jupiter deals with, bigger things and philosophy in the world than just your own, kind of thing. It's more world energy. Saturn deals with society and rules that we didn't make and restrictions in life. So it's just not like these personal energies, if you will. But we just had Neptune retrograde, which is an outer planet. What happens with these outer planets is when the sun gets to about 120 degrees away, which is considered a trine, which we will go into those aspects too. If I'm jumping too far ahead, we're going to catch up to all this too. But when the sun goes that far away, you're about to get a retrograde. So we're about to get a Jupiter retrograde, which is less than a month away because that sun's coming into Leo. So what's going to happen? It's going to make that trine. Sun in Leo trying to trine Jupiter. Well, gosh, it'd be nice if we could get a Sun Jupiter trine without Jupiter going retrograde, but sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. Often we don't. Jupiter will go retrograde right before the sun does trine it. But that's how we know, because they're out farther. When the sun gets away from that planet this far, it's going to start to go retrograde. And then as we go forward, and the sun comes into Sagittarius, it'll actually have to go a little bit more. And we'll see that Jupiter, it retrogrades actually when the sun's in Scorpio, right? Because that would be the 240-degree mark. But you can see that Jupiter will go direct right around that time in November. So you can do that with all the outer planets. It's just a cool trick if you didn't know when things are going to go. But I'm also going to teach you how to look up ephemeris and how to really know when things are going. It's easy with charting software because I can go, oh, when's Jupiter go retrograde? And I can click on this and, oh, turns retrograde at 8 degrees on July 28th, So there's definitely tools out there to help, but there's other ways to know if you just pull up any chart and, you could be like, oh, the sun's coming into, it's at the end of Scorpio here and Jupiter's still retrograde. Jupiter's definitely going to come direct soon. It's coming. And if you don't have software, then it's just another way to know that when you get that trine, these outers are shifting. And same goes with Saturn. Saturn will be retrograde in Aquarius, come to 18 degrees. The sun will be coming off that trine, and boom, we're going to start to see Saturn flip direct, which will be October 23rd. So I don't know, a little jump ahead, but if we're talking about those retrogrades, because really Saturn, these outer planets retrograde, what feels like half the year. Like Jupiter's like about 3.5, 4 months. Saturn is about 5 months, and right there in that area. And then the outer planets are pretty much half a year on, half a year off. Neptune, Uranus, Pluto, 6 months on, 6 months off every year. So it's just the way it works. Jupiter. Jupiter definitely is a lot of things. Always. Jupiter always brings a lot of things. People call it Santa Claus. Oh, Jupiter's coming. I'm going to get so many good things. Jupiter gets a lot of projection on it that Jupiter's just going to bring all the gifts in the world. What software am I using? Or are you asking? You're probably asking them. I use Astro Gold. I just saw that throw up. Jupiter is so many things. It's so expansive. There's a lot going on. It's adaptability, but it's beliefs on the biggest level. It is a story. That's why I think that, astrology has a lot of correlation to the ninth house and to Jupiter, even though it's ruled by Mercury, Uranus energy. There's something about the belief in it. Gosh, astrology is not going to mean much if you don't believe in it. I could walk up to some random person that doesn't believe in astrology and tell them all sorts of stuff about it, and they're not going to care. They don't believe in it. So it always, beliefs are very tied to Jupiter. Beliefs are very big. It's interesting too, when you think about Jupiter, it is exalted in Cancer. Jupiter's so big, it has 79 moons. It makes it no wonder it's exalted in Cancer, right? Like Cancer rules emotion. People are so emotional about their beliefs. We will be so emotionally invested in a belief. Like I believe in astrology so much, I want to do it for a living. You don't believe in it? I don't care. But I'm also not going to get like overly emotional. Like, you don't believe in astrology? But we can get that way. You don't believe in the narrative of the world right now? You don't believe in what they said on the TV? You don't believe? Like, so beliefs are a very big thing, and that's why they're ruled by Jupiter. And that's why astrology gets correlated too, because it is a belief, but it's also a story, which is the point of going through these piece by piece, is that we're going to learn how to piece these stories together. It can be dogmatic. It rules religion too. It can be, you don't know the way. Jupiter is the guru. I know the way. This is it. This is the belief. This is the one way. And if you don't live that, you're going to hell. God will smite you. So there can be a dogmatic thing there, which I'll teach you too, about how every sign's opposite sign is such an interesting thing that needs to be balanced out. Of course, Gemini Mercury is the opposite of Sagittarius and Jupiter. So, got to have debate, got to be able to let other people have an opinion without this dogmatic, one way of living. But Jupiter is this big, it is the one truth. It is like the big truth in your life, but we all get that, and we have to accept that other people get that too. Philosophy. Oh boy, I love to think about philosophy. And like I mentioned earlier, talking about the moon, what is it? Jupiter is that creative mind, that right brain intellect of like intuition of like, ooh, I really feel like that could be this, or I just, and then there's feeling in that belief too. There's feeling with Jupiter being exalted in Cancer and having 79 moons, but it is the philosophy of wanting to know more. What else is out there? There's so much more. Jupiter's always expanding. Wisdom, we have a lot of wisdom where Jupiter is. Definitely does have the wisdom, but that's where, the dogmatic sort of, this is the one way because we think we know. You get a lot of know-it-all energy with Jupiter too. What's the big picture, the big meaning? It's always expanding. It's just, that's why Jupiter transits, like people think, oh, I'm getting gifts, it's going to be amazing, but it could just be a lot. What is really going on here? It could be so much. Oh my gosh. Jupiter in the 10th. I have so many responsibilities. I thought I was going to get a raise and a promotion and everything was going to be great and there was going to be some gift. And now I just got responsibilities. I have to do all this. I'm not even getting paid more. I have to do this, and this. Like, what the? Yeah. What? So amplification is Jupiter, expansion. Whatever Jupiter comes around or wherever it's at in your chart, it is a place where you can amplify your life exponentially and go really far and take on more. It does have faith into it, definitely about the faith, the belief, the faith. There's something bigger. You know, like Jupiter is bigger. There's always something bigger. What is the bigger thing that is your truth? Boom, truth. Sagittarius. What is your big truth? If Jupiter is Sagittarius and it's the centaur shooting an arrow, where are you aiming your arrow? And what do you really believe? Intuition, that right brain, it is a very intuitive sign. Sagittarius, all the fire signs are, every sign can be intuitive, but there's something about Jupiter that's just an acid trip on its own. And it does rule psychedelics. And there's something about that space that is intuition because it's not linear and it doesn't necessarily have to have some, it doesn't just have to make sense to everybody. It's like, what did you intuit? Honesty, long journeys, not short journeys like Mercury, but definitely big, long journeys. And gosh, journeys are wild, right? Oh, I want to go here, but it's not just about the destination. Well, how'd you get there? Did you take a plane? Did you drive across the country? Did you take a bus? Did you take a train? How long were you on the road for? You know, these are Jupiter things like big quests, pilgrimage, multicultural. Jupiter does have that, you know, world element to it. You know, it's bigger than just the community you're in. It's bigger than just the environment and the town you were raised in. Like, what's up with that culture? And what do they believe in? Oh, that is a Catholic culture, or that is a Mayan culture, or that is Egyptian, or, you know, Vedic, you know. Foreigners are very Jupiter, Sagittarius, because they're, whoa, what can they teach us? They know something about life that we don't. They've lived somewhere that's completely culturally different. Immigrants, ideals, ideas. Yeah, definitely, like, you know, that spontaneous idea that comes in, like, can be very Jupiterian. Like, where'd that come from? Just got downloaded to you, you know? And try and tell somebody like, oh, this is what, you know, I just had this idea. Where'd you study that would be the opposite of Gemini. Who told you that? Where'd you find that information? Like, wow, I literally don't know. It just came to me and I had this idea and this ideal. I'm gonna create it. I believe in it. The nomad, the journeyer, someone who's just kind of on the go all the time, like definitely changing a lot of things up with Jupiter. Homeless. I don't know. Maybe if they're a nomad, right? Or constantly traveling and on the go, which Jupiter can, you know, be, but not necessarily. Exploring, inspiration, a restlessness, wanderlust. Freedom is a big part of Jupiter. It can't be restrained. That's where Jupiter and Saturn have their differences, right? Jupiter is the son of Zeus. Or, I'm sorry, Zeus is the son of Kronos, Saturn, which we'll get into the Greek mythology of this in a little bit, but of Jupiter. But, you know, there's a need to expand freedom. There's something about Jupiter energy that just does not want to be controlled or restricted or kept in one place. It has to constantly expand and grow, and it has to have the freedom to do that, or it will just, you know, kind of like if you blow up a balloon and keep pumping it up, or blowing air into it, well, eventually it's going to pop because it needs the freedom to keep expanding too. If you're going to keep adding to it, Jupiter is kind of like a hot air balloon. There can be half truths there because really, you know, if it's just some download, like what, oh, your truth doesn't have to be the full truth of, you know, everybody you're around or talking to. The guru, it rules teaching, teacher, natural law, which would be very much like a divine law. Saturn would be, you know, societal law, government law, what the rules are of this, you know, society. Jupiter is definitely like a higher visionary law, that a spiritual law, if you will. The law of karma is a natural law, you know, that kind of thing. Love is the most important thing in all the universe. That would be like, you know, somebody's belief of a natural law too, right? The shaman and alienation. The fire signs all get a little alienation because they're a little bit more, there's a special destiny to fire energy, which Jupiter is a fire. Rules a fire sign, it has that, you know, in it too. Let's look at Zeus. Zeus is wild, right? Because, people do think of Jupiter as Santa Claus, if you will. Oh, it's Jupe. It's going to bring me all the gifts. It's so good. It is good, but damn, Jupiter's also not fucking around. Zeus has a lightning bolt, and he definitely gets after it. He is the god of all gods, and you know, he definitely wants the power. He took the power back from Kronos, Saturn, but there is a positive aspect. Jupiter is the great benefic. We'll get into those kind of aspects too, benefic, malefic as we go. Maybe we'll pause on Zeus for a second and touch on some of that here. That's important, as we talked about the modalities and a little bit about the elements here. Like, we should also what was I talking about? What was I gonna say? Is it important to you? Do you remember what I pulled up my iPad and said I was gonna take a break on Jupiter for? Modalities and Zeus. Yeah, I talked about the modalities with you. There was something else. What was it? Benefic, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The planets. So planets are benefic, malefic. The sun is not really either, but it could be more of a malefic. It can be a benefic too, but there's something about the sun that the malefics kind of get shit done. Like, I know it sounds bad. Oh, that's a bad thing. It's more neutral than anything, but there's something too about the sun that it is that big ball of fire. Like, it's kind of, there's an energy source to it, a force. It really does kind of make things happen, but really the sun is neutral, and so is the moon. They can kind of go both ways. So really neutral and neutral. They can kind of switch. Like, emotions can be, oh my gosh, this is the best feeling and emotion I've ever felt in my life, and then the next minute, like, oh, I just got betrayed and I feel like I'm gonna, like, this is the worst feeling I've ever had. So they definitely can go back and forth. But Mercury is definitely neutral. It's definitely about seeing both sides. It can be a malefic if it's getting aspected hard by a malefic planet. It can be a benefic, so it can switch teams. Mercury is like we talked about earlier in this class with Mercury, and like going between Zeus and Hades, the underworld and the heavens. It can switch energy, quick. So our mind can go benefic to malefic real quick too. There's a lot that can change, but Mercury is neutral. Venus is the lesser benefic, but it is still a benefic planet, and it does about like really the good things in life, the relationships, the harmony, the beauty, this feels so good, yes, I want that. I want to taste it. I want to have it forever. But anyways, it is a benefic, so it brings more of a beneficial sort of energy. Of course, when you get big transits with Venus coming in, like, you definitely will expect more, positive things if they're good, or if it's really harsh with, big planets that are like a Saturn or something. Like, ooh, could still be benefic, but will it be benefic in an action-oriented way of what it's forcing, but maybe not feeling benefic in just to begin with? But that could also be like a lot of things. We'll get into that more too. Mars is the lesser malefic. So really, I should do this. Benefic. Malefic. Venus. Jupiter. Mars. Saturn. So it's just important to know that. Is it necessarily that malefics are bad? No. Malefics get shit done. Straight up. This is Mars, Saturn, Aries, Capricorn energy. They get things done. They force things. Sometimes we really want to sit in like comfortable places of, just beauty and relationship, and everything's going to be fine, and this ideal and belief, and that feels great. But sometimes things change, and we need the malefics actually to come through and actually get things going, get things kickstarted, make big decisions in our life, because we don't get any growth if we just sit there. Some Q&As. What does a void off course moon mean? A void off course moon is when the moon is not aspecting anything in transit. So say we definitely don't have one right now with the moon in Leo. It's aspecting a ton of things, but say we have planets in a certain part of the zodiac. A major aspect would be a sextile, a square, or a trine, an opposition, or a conjunction. If the moon is traveling through a specific space and it's not making any major aspects, that's called void off course or void of course. So when the moon's void, it's kind of not getting, it's not getting a lot of pressure. It's not getting a lot of action. It can be a little lazy. It can be, time to be emotionally creative. It gets things going, but not necessarily as you would expect. It can feel like things are missing. You can almost be expecting something that, misses. There's like an aspect of like, oh, things are coming together, and there's a miss. It's almost like a misfire, because really it's rare. Like, yes, it happens, but the moon's always kind of aspecting something. And even if it's an asteroid or, certain other spots or the nodes, so that's what it means when it's a void moon. Is this just the audio? You can't see my picture, Carrie? Oh, you can see my picture? Okay, good. Hoping so. You can see my screen though, right? I guess if you called in, it is that a Zoom webinar, you could have called in, and if you just called in on your phone, then there wouldn't be a picture. Anyways, it's good to know there's benefic and malefics. Mercury is neither, but really it's these planets: benefics, Venus, Jupiter; malefics, Mars, Saturn. Astrologers would consider all the outer planets, just Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, to be malefic. I think they can go both ways too, but yeah, you can't see me. You guys are hilarious. Oh, if you can see her. Okay. I'm just making sure. I just want to make sure it's going good on my end, so that, like, you know, I can, I can put this on the site later. Enjoy yourselves. I'm glad everybody's having fun. Where are we going? Where are we going now? Where are we going now? Oh yeah, back to Zeus. Yeah, Zeus is wild. Can throw a lightning bolt. You know, god of all the gods. But he did, you know, banish Kronos, his father, which is Saturn, which we're going to go into next, which is definitely a big deal. Also, of course, the planet Jupiter. I mean, pretty amazing planet. It is the biggest planet other than the sun in our solar system. I mean, it does look, you know, it's fascinating how it looks. Like, it's very creative. It almost looks like a Picasso painting in some ways, or, you know, some drip art, or, you know, it's crazy, right? Like, it's just like, whoa, like there's like an acid trip in Jupiter. So Jupiter can, you know, rule that vision quest, you know, sort of aspect too, of like wanting to see things that you don't normally see or understand, and what that philosophy is. And there's big storms on Jupiter, and, you know, it's kind of crazy and chaotic. And Zeus kind of holds that vibe too, like everything's fine, and then all of a sudden, you know, it gets a little crazy. And you know, Zeus used to rape a lot of women too, so it's interesting. Jupiter's definitely always going to bring a lot. It's going to amplify, but you don't always know how that's going to go. It can be a gift. It can be a gift later on in the future, but things get amplified maybe for a reason in time. So sometimes, like, we get our Jupiter return every 12 years, and you know, we always expect these gifts, but maybe we don't see them right away because so much is getting amplified from the old cycle to realize that a new cycle is starting. Um, Jupiter. It's just so big. It's just a behemoth of a planet. So our beliefs and our faith and how much we can learn about higher knowledge and wisdom. I mean, again, kind of like the sun with our creative potential, and can be like, whoa, larger than life. Like, oh my God. So, you know, it's not other ways to look at that too, from that kind of perspective. Oh, yes. It's time for Saturn. Which, of course, is the ruler of Capricorn. Saturn does rule society. It rules this physical realm. It is physical structure. It is your teeth, bones. Saturn is definitely not messing around. Saturn means absolute business. It deals with the social position of life, the authority in your life. It can be, you know, about the society that you were born into as a life, like what your karma is in that society and what the rules were. So if you're born in America, you know, there's a different set of governed rules than if you're born in Africa. So it's really, you know, about the society. Saturn is society and what's going on socially in that. Um, it's also the judge. It is the boss. So there is this ultimate sort of thing with Saturn here in our charts, where we have to be, you know, the judge. It's exalted in Libra, which is the scales. And, you know, being able to make that big decision in life for what is just. It also rules age and maturity. Get the Saturn return about 28 and a half to 30 years old, but it does take Saturn about 29 years to go around the sun. So this big cycle of maturation. Like, you're really not an adult from an astrological point of view until after your Saturn return. That's when the big maturation in your life takes place, and where a lot of karma from the beginning stage of learning how to be a part of society takes place. And it's usually about big decisions when you get to that point, mature, hard decisions that can be very interesting. I think too that there's something about Saturn where people are born into a more Uranian state, and then that Saturn return can shift people into a more Saturnian state. So you'll get people that might be a complete rebel, not care two, F's about what's going on. And then all of a sudden they hit this 28 and a half to 30 and they choose to get a family and settle down and get a normal job, and, maybe reach some social position there. Or you'll get people that really, saddled up and went to college and, worked hard when they're young, and all of a sudden they get to 28 and a half, 30, and they might flip Urania and be like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm taking a whole different route. There's usually at that Saturn return a big choice that we get presented with in some place in our life, and we have to decide if we're going to take a rare route or a normal sort of what society's going route. There's no right or wrong, but Saturn is this big judge of the decisions in your life and the authority also that we can have, but it does rule the karma in our life too. So Saturn's a big deal, big planet. Repression, it restricts things. It's got those rings on it, right? So there is this like control, that everything has to be controlled and, on point. Can repress us from doing the things that we want to do because there's a rule for that. You can't just go drive 150 miles wherever you want to go. You'll get a ticket. We're going to repress you from that thing that you want to do. Whatever it may be, there's, aspects in life that we get repressed from, oppression, feeling like we're constantly being held down. If you have a really hard Saturn in your chart, or making hard aspects to your moon or sun or ascendant, or, in a certain house getting aspected bad, it can feel like, wow, this part of my life is always holding me back. But it is that is the karma in life that you step by step get through and realize that you can actually, accomplish a lot in that space in your life when you do become the boss. Punishment, gosh, you break the rules, you get in trouble. Discipline, it's rigid. Capricorn, Saturn can be rigid, not changing the rules. You want to amend the Constitution? No. Says no amendments to this. That's kind of like the government, right? Like, think about the Constitution and even Pluto being in Capricorn for the United States. Like, they don't want to change, they don't want to amend the Constitution or change. Even the Supreme Court in this crazy world we live in is like, no. I don't care how mad people are. Saturn is rigid. Some of these are more just like Capricorn traits. Tradition definitely is a tradition, like a societal tradition, a cultural tradition. This is the step-by-step way that we do things here. We're gonna have 4th of July. This weekend, this Monday, 4th of July is coming up. That's a tradition. Society shuts down and lets you have that holiday, and actually, doesn't repress that. But if you want to go to work, you're getting repressed. Just kidding. There's a guilt that can come with Saturn because of the karma and feeling like you can't achieve in this, but you actually can. It's one of your places that you have great power and authority in your life. Boundaries is the big thing. It is the boundary of what we can see with our naked eye. So, Saturn is where, gosh, when you start to push past your boundaries in life, you really start to cross this rainbow bridge to your biggest healing moments, which is where Chiron sits, and into this, oh my gosh, liberation of Uranus. So there's boundaries in life. There's no doubt about it. We need to set boundaries for ourselves, but we also need to push the boundaries for ourselves. Saturn is places that we do that. Structure, form, like I said, bones, teeth, lead, like it is the structure and the physical. It is physical. Boom. Patriotism, politics, governments, responsibility is a big one with Saturn energy. Got to be responsible. You know, Saturn does teach us that you got to step up. You got to take stuff on in life. You can't just, be a baby. You got to grow up, accomplish something. You're here for a reason. You have a destiny, a mission. So Saturn is this, gets this harsh rap, but really Saturn just wants you to step up and do something with your life. You didn't just come here for nothing. I think it's like Saturn does actually remind us that there's purpose, and are you going to do it? You don't have to. God's not going to hate you either way, but there's a responsibility to do something here. You came to learn things and experience, and everybody's responsibilities and mission and destiny is going to be a little different, but Saturn is that peak of your mountain, ruled by Capricorn. And definitely conditioning. Wherever Saturn's at in your chart could definitely be a lot of conditioning from family, society, is what it is. We break out of that and start to define our own rules. And that's, again, Saturn. It is that definition and that judge of your rules, your reality, what you're going to follow, if you're going to be repressed, and if you're going to take responsibility for things in life. But what tradition are you building? What boundaries are you setting? Are you just the one getting boundaries set on you, or are you starting to set boundaries for yourself? Which is where Uranus comes into play afterwards. But before we go to that, Saturn again takes 29 years to go around the sun. It's definitely getting back there into where these things take a while. Let's look at what's up with Saturn. Well, it's Kronos. If you ever wondered why Saturn was in opposition to the moon and Cancer energy, gosh, lovely, right? Well, Saturn eats, his babies. So father time, if you will. He was not the nicest god. Definitely would eat his young. Rhea, Jupiter's mom, replaced Jupiter with a rock, and Saturn bit into a rock, and that's how Jupiter lived, because Saturn would eat his newborn babies. Ooh. So if you ever wondered why having a Saturn square your moon, or Saturn on your moon, or any moon Saturn aspect, or even Saturn in the fourth house, it can definitely feel like you were trying to be eaten by this absolute menace, this creep in your life. It's not comfortable. Not a comfortable situation to be in. So, but it teaches a lot of big lessons in life and emotional responsibility. It definitely has its purpose, but not a safe feeling per se. Yeah, Kronos was no joke. He was not good. And then Jupiter came and did overthrow him because he didn't get eaten, and that was definitely better. But the Titan King. We all know and love the mighty gods that make up the classical Greek pantheon, but how much is known about their predecessors, the Titans? Whoa. Thanks to the ambiguity of the role of the Titans, Kronos is a bit lesser known god. Kronos is the god of time. That's the important thing with Saturn too, is Saturn is the god of time. Everything takes time. Saturn's a good reminder that you don't grow up and achieve everything in one day. It takes a lifetime, if you will, to reach what you're ultimately, the biggest things. Chronos actually is the Greek word for time. besides being the god of time, Kronos is the husband of his sister Rhea. Lovely, married his sister. That's the mother of famous, Zeus, Hades, Demeter, but also Poseidon, Neptune, which we'll get to. And Chiron. Rhea was the mother of Chiron too. Yeah, Zeus. Anyways, 8 babies, really nice guy, father of time, controller of the physical realm. He was the son of Uranus, which we'll get to, of course, next. He actually castrated and outcasted his father. So really nice kid, and then started eating his own babies. He's not a big fan of family, which you can look at that too from the perspective of Cancer Capricorn and being in opposition and 10th, 4th house. People can go after these big dreams and goals and what this mission is and forget about their family or castrate their family out and say, I don't care, I'm busy. Balance is key to all these, like I was mentioning earlier. Oh, Jupiter is the thighs. I'm glad you mentioned that, Selena. Jupiter is the thighs. But really, it is more the signs, which I will show a cool chart for that in the next class. We'll go over more of the body stuff. But Jupiter is the thighs, the legs. Saturn is the knees, and Uranus is the shins. Neptune is the feet. Pluto is the genitals, the underworld, the stuff you don't show. And Mercury also is the gallbladder. And Venus is also the kidneys, because Libra rules the kidneys and Virgo rules the gallbladder and your digestive system. Scorpio would rule your genitals and private parts, bowels. And then, thighs, legs, knees is Saturn, bones, and Uranus. Weird things like wrists and shins and ankles because they bend in interesting ways. Why'd you think I'm funny? Okay. Kronos. Lovely. We love Kronos so much. Oh, let's see. I mean, I think Saturn's an awesome looking planet. It's sharp, like a Capricorn. Like I'm wearing a nice jacket today, so I can feel like someone important teaching a class. But Saturn wants to be, sharp and tailored. I'll just go back to that image. Like, I mean, this is a sharp looking planet, like where Jupiter and Mercury both look like they're on some, crazy drug or, acid trip or whatever. Mars just looked pissed off. Venus is doing her own thing, looking beautiful. Saturn's just looking sharp. It's like a bandsaw. It's like a razor blade. These thin, has like, I think 7 thin rings that go around it. And a lot of moons too. So it's in opposition to Cancer. There is a lot of emotion actually that gets suppressed and repressed with Saturn. But there's a sharpness to it that you gotta step up and be responsible. You gotta do something with your life. You came here for a reason. You have so much time. There's only so much time. What are you gonna do with your time? You're gonna be precise. There is a hexagram on the top or the bottom, I guess, depending on how you look at Saturn. But there is something about this time. There is something about Saturn hexes us to this physical reality and binds us here. And, Capricorn is the devil card in tarot. There is something about Saturn that we get hexed to time and space. And I think our souls don't necessarily love that. I think we kind of, you know, appreciate it for what it is and learning things here, but at the same time, you know, I don't think we really appreciate that hex that we're put on to experience and go through karma. At least while we're here. I think in the big scale, the big scheme of things, it's all gravy. It's all as it's supposed to be, and we do it, you know. But there is a physical hex in life that we have to. Saturn's almost a struggle and repression. Like there's always going to be some struggle and repression. You can have it all. You could be a millionaire. You're going to wake up some days and you're going to struggle and feel it and feel that physical burden of life or responsibility in life. And, you know, that's Saturn, ruler of this physical realm. Yeah, Saturn sucks. Saturn is not as fun. Like the sun and the moon, they just want to be comfortable and have a good time and enjoy life and create. And Saturn's like, well, did you get your shit done first? Did you get your mission? Did you learn some lessons? Jupiter's like the gets the guru, right? But it's really Saturn that I think teaches us the biggest lessons um, in our life. Oops. Ruled by Uranus. Uranus is all about electricity, liberation. It is freedom, liberation from conditioning. It is, we can't see Uranus. We see Saturn, and Saturn holds the keys to this physical existence. And it is once we expand our mind past Saturn that we liberate ourselves from a lot of conditioning and we start to really channel. There's something about Uranus that is an angelic, and it's so unique because you're getting into your own ways of connecting to the universe that weren't what the constructs of time and space taught you. You're finding your true individuality. Uranus is also the higher octave of Mercury, so it is very mental. That's why it's also a ruler of astrology. You know, it's alchemy, but then there's this like, oh wow, look at these other ways to connect things, and wow, pull from this timeline, and oh my gosh, I'm channeling into the future here. You know, there's something that's, everything is all connected with Uranus. Um, but you can only get there. It's funny, Uranus is so interesting, and Aquarius energy in our chart is you can only get there by finding out your individuality and coming back to that sense of knowing who you are, and not being part of a herd. If Saturn is society, there's a herd state to Saturn and being in the matrix and hex to time and space. Uranus, Aquarius, which is where so much energy has been at in our lives recently and where Pluto's coming, there's something that is very much about to liberate people from conditioning. There is definitely a revolution coming, if you will. That's even a key word for Uranus Aquarius energy over here. So, you know, boom. But individualization, you know, you just can't be a part of a group unless you can find that group of one in yourself. That's so important. Once you find your individuality and be able to individuate into your own sense of knowing, your own sense of time and space and the universe and these different constructs and different ways to expand past Saturn, then you can really start to find like-minded groups, the tribe. Uranus rules people, society too, but it is rebellious. It doesn't do what it's told. It's past Saturn's hex, you know, so we all have this in us too. We can't see it. We got to go find it and individualize ourselves to get there, but we can get there. It can also be group hysteria. No wonder the world is the way it is. There is a lot of group hysteria in the world, and that's because there's a lot of Uranus energy going on right now. And coming into that, you know, there's more of it coming. Secret societies is an interesting thing. You know, what's going on? What's going on with secret societies? It can be alienated. Remember, Uranus was castrated and sent off to the furthest reaches of the universe by his son Kronos. And it just, wow, gone. It was actually Jupiter who overthrown Kronos and actually kind of brought Uranus back. So I think it's interesting to think about Jupiter and Uranus and their relationship as even like Sagittarius Aquarius being in sextile. It's like, grandson had grandpappy's back. Like, get back here. We're all about freedom and expanse and liberation. We need you, the god of the skies, Uranus. But we can alienate ourselves too. There's something about Uranus that can feel so different from people, because Uranus is a very different energy than what the other planets are, that you can feel like you're not part of the group, or you're not part of society, or you don't fit in, or you're just a weirdo, because there is something about that. But it's like, that's the coolest people in this world, are just the unique ones that do their own thing. And it's like, whoa, how do you just do your own thing? But some people can get a little, alienated for it, or be too, I can't think of the word right now. I want to say eclectic, but that's not it, but it's another word like that. Hopes, ideals, definitely in that realm too, like Jupiter, where it's dealing with, the future and how to create something, and it's a flash of insight. And there is that electricity, and that it's the Uranus is the nervous system within us. Like, it's like, whoa, I just got this crazy idea. Like, let's figure this out. Let's fix this. Let's do it. I have this vision and this hope of where things can go. Long-term memory. If Mercury is short-term memory, Uranus is long-term memory. But I think it's long-term memory of like past lives. Like, we're talking Akashic records. Like, Uranus is where you store the Akashic records. The anarchist, not going to follow the rules, the tribe, community, fragmentation, because you can feel separated because of your differences, but it's also how special you are for your differences. Can bring trauma. It brings quick change. Uranus is lightning fast. This is going to change. It's not all fun and games. I love Uranus, but oh boy, when Uranus hits, it can feel like, what the actual fuck just happened? Like, what? It's always trying to accelerate you. That's one thing about Uranus, is it is an accelerator. I mean, it's trying to, really put you where you need to go. But gosh, that can be a shocking thing. Think about the Uranus opposition when you're 42, 44 years old. Oh God, you get shocked with the reality that you never liberated yourself until this moment now. And you got to get the divorce and buy the sports car, and damn it, I got to change my whole life. This is not how I want to live. So it can bring this trauma into your life. Mass trauma, oh boy. If Uranus does rule the people, it's the people having to go through quick acceleration and change too. And that can feel very traumatic. A splitting, very interesting. Unique, very shocking. The projection. Hyperactivity. Yeah, there's something too, it's just the nervous system. There's always something firing. There's always this intellect that's moving. And it can be shocking what comes up when you start to channel what that can be. Prometheus, Chiron saved Prometheus. Chiron comes before Uranus too, but we'll touch on Chiron later. Revolutionary, ostracized for being different, cast out. The astral plane, telepathic, objective awareness. These are big things that Uranus does rule, and that Aquarius rules. Yeah, Uranus does not care. Uranus spins on its side, on this axis. No one else spins that way. Its poles are completely different. It does not care what everything else is doing. It does not care what Saturn's rules are. It just doesn't care. Uranus actually married his mother in Greek mythology. He was the god of the skies, god of the heavens. Married Gaia, actually, which is the name of Earth, as you know. And yep, Doesn't give a fuck. Sorry, not sorry. These are not my favorite pictures of Uranus. Hmm. Yes, the eclectic, unusual, odd, but absolutely beautiful and just does its own thing. Uranus, it's something, something special. There's something special about humanity and how different we all are and how special we all are. And X-ray emission from Uranus. Yeah, it's just there's always something. It rules telescopes. We needed a telescope, so it rules like devices and of course the internet. We needed one to see it. Shoots off X-rays detected from comets. It was throwing flares. The sun was flaring, and Uranus is, the ruler of Aquarius, opposite Leo in the sun, and it's like, oh, you're gonna flare, I'm gonna flare. What? So there's just something about the liberation of doing whatever you want. If you want to wear, a pink belt, you want to do your some pink in the middle here and some blue hair, like do what you want. You want to get some tattoos, there's an edge to Uranus. It is about freedom and liberation. And it is how we do that in our own lives where Uranus is at in our chart. I was just blue with a little bit of green. Now I'm green with a little bit of red. I don't care. That's what I want to wear today. What? I want to be really sideways. Screw you. Not necessarily in a mean way, but this is Uranus. It is completely liberated, completely free of control. It will spin how it wants. It will do what it wants. It does not care. It is free. So Uranus was the god of the skies. The sky god, Uranus. Uranus actually means sky. It's a personification of the sky and the primal deities. Uranus, the son and husband of Gaia, Earth. So that's, how important I think it is that, we find that Uranus, we're meant to liberate the collective and we're meant to liberate the Earth. We are, actually the son and the husband of this place. And I think that we have to, and daughter and, wife, but we have to connect to that energy and liberate. I think that's a big part of Uranus's place here. God of the heavens and God of the skies. It's very angelic, but it's also there's a craziness to Uranus where anything can happen. Uranus, you can't predict it. It's gonna show up with the last thing you thought every time. So, but that's God and that's the heavens coming through because we don't always get to predict and have everything just figured out. Like sometimes we have to get shocked, you know. And but that helps us grow and that helps us understand things and come to these very powerful innovation moments in our life. And next up is Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune. So these are some Pisces Neptune keywords that I think are very positive to know and look at. Neptune is, of course, spirituality. It is the vision. It is compassion. It is unconditional love. If Venus is the planet of love and romance and, that kind of artistic energy, well, Neptune is the higher octave of that energy. It can be extremely heart opening. It can be so beautiful, but it can also be such an illusion and it can be so not real. But it is our imagination, our dream state, and really where we go when we can connect to the highest of the high in many ways. But with that can come delusionment. Thought we were, the intuition's a funny thing. Yeah, we can be the most powerful tool in our life, but wow, can it also trick us? And there can be this victim mindset with it, or even like a martyrdom with it. It's very interesting. Like there's definitely these sensitive places. So even with Neptune here, we're talking like kind of Pisces 12th house energy. There's getting locked up, alcohol, escape, um institutionalized, crazy. um it does rule spirituality, but that's the interesting thing. Spirituality is such a crazy, it's so vast, right? There's no it's infinite, but in that infiniteness is some people get so lost and they lose touch with reality. Neptune can have us lose touch, so it's a hard one, but it's also where we are so sensitive, and it's also where we almost don't try hard enough. We almost just put the rose-colored glasses on and say, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. But is it really fine? Persecuted, having people, come after you. The savior, very interesting. Illusions for sure. Priest, priestess energy. Definitely rules escaping and drugs and alcohol and trying to leave this physical reality. But gosh, it is so mystical. It is such a medium energy of talking about like talking with angels and God and the channel. Oh my gosh. It's just knowing what's yours and too, and like knowing what's real and knowing how to use your psychic energy, because it is very much that, addiction, escapism, hopelessness, helplessness. There's that martyrdom, that victimness. Gosh, if you have a, harsh Neptune in your chart, we can definitely feel like this victim all the time, or like, oh, nothing ever goes our way. Definitely doesn't, involve boundaries. There are no boundaries in Neptune land. Um, but on the other beautiful side, there's a surrender. We have to surrender in life. We can't always just push our ego, push our ego, push our ego, push our ego. We start to meet, you know, all sorts of different aspects in life and cycles changing and just other aspects playing out. It's like we really have to be okay with like letting God just go, just that okay, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I surrender to that. I'll be strong in my surrendering and know that I'll be okay, and I'll have that faith. There's definitely a high faith that needs to be where your Neptune is, and Pisces energy, 12th house, subconscious, transcendent, but wounded, suffering. So it's such a mixed bag with Neptune, Pisces, 12th house energy. It's the most beautiful stuff and the most amazing gifts in the world, but it is also, wow, some really crazy places. The Fool can have suicide energy, no identity. Also a masochist, the victim. But wow, fantasy, and how you can channel that fantasy into some really beautiful things. People with, you know, really strong Neptunes can be some of the best artists and best musicians. And oh my gosh, they just non-stop unbound creative potential. But that's where they don't get lost in these visions and they don't do anything or they don't identify with any of it. They just get lost. There's also like really identifying with and bringing fantasies to life. But also, do we get too lost in fantasies too? Are we too naive? Poet, musician, loss, erosion. There is this things can start to dissolve. Neptune can dissolve things. Isolation, confusion, the dreamer, disbelief, drugs, guilt. A lot going on with that Neptune, but it is a beautiful energy. Poseidon, the god of the seas. But he also had some rule on land too. But really is the sea god. I wonder why these aren't loading. Probably because I'm on. Hello. Okay. That trident, which does look like the glyph of Neptune, right? Whoa. There can be a chaos that comes with Poseidon and Neptune energy. There is no boundary, there is no structure, there is no land. It's just feeling and emotion and subconscious. Can be pretty intense. But at the same time, it's like it's the intensity of the disillusionment because actually, in the moment, there's no real intensity with Neptune. It's Pluto that brings the intensity. Neptune's so subtle. At the same time, with all of that, it's like a drug addiction, right? Like you start out doing drugs and everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine, and all of a sudden you lost your entire life. you know. But at the same time, unlimited, unbound creative potential and unconditioning love and spiritual, connection and channeling and, a lot of really positive things come through Neptune. Enlightenment can come through Neptune. Whatever that means to you. I'm definitely not here to tell you what enlightenment is, but what is that to you? It's a beautiful planet though. It's very blue. Just kind of looks like this body of water, but it's definitely a gas giant and it will, if you could go there, don't jump in. You'll probably, it won't be good. Well, I think that's where I'm going to stop because I want to go into Pluto pretty in depth. Pluto, I want to touch on pretty big next week and then move into probably go into the archetypes big time of the signs and like re-go through that, but also realize that the planets are the archetypes. It is the planets that really do set the tone. So now that we have this base of these planets and we're going to go deeper into Pluto and we'll probably touch on Chiron too, we'll start to go into other things after the archetypes. Of course, we'll go through the signs, which are basically the archetypes. Um, there's a lot to cover. But slowly but surely we're going to get there. But the planets, Pluto next in the next week, and then archetypes, nodes, it'll probably be another 2 weeks before we get into charts and, putting this to practice and like looking at these kind of other examples. But I think that that was a good start for this first class. And hopefully you guys thought so too. What do you guys think? Yeah, Lilith. Yep, Lilith, North Node, South Node, Chiron, all that. Yeah, I think it's just good to review and start slow. And, maybe some people never done any of that beginner stuff before. Awesome, James. Outstanding. I'm glad you guys enjoyed that first class. It was a nice solid, 3.5 hours. And I think that was a good mix. I don't want to go into Pluto yet because Pluto's important to me. So we're going to start off next week with Pluto, the nodes, and do some evolutionary astrology stuff with those. And then we're going to go into archetypes, houses, aspects. There's a lot to cover. It's going to be a lot, but I think this was a good base of the planets, the archetypes in a lot of ways too. And it touched on the signs. We might jump faster than we think into some of the other stuff because I do think this covered a decent amount, but stoked. I appreciate you all. And yeah, if you have any questions too, if you're in the Facebook group, there is a link on the website. I will try and put up a page on my website too of just like a kind of like an open blog where people can ask questions, and I'll try and visit throughout the week, of course, and like stay in touch with you all. But we'll do this again next Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific. And if I could give you any homework for this week, if you wish to do it, I'm not going to make you do your homework. I'm not going to check, but just go through the planets on your own and really see how they play out in your life. Where do you exhibit your Mars? Where do you really notice your Venus? Where do you really, see where you're Uranian? Like where do you really liberate yourself? Like what is that thing that you're so unique at and you're like, I don't care what other people think? Where's your Saturn at? Like what is your Saturn like in your life? Like where do you really dedicate? Where do you put your time and effort into? And what was your biggest grow up moment? Ask yourself some questions, play with the planets, even, with what we talked about today. Look at your chart, see what it means to you, where your planet's at, just by what we talked about today. All right. Love and appreciate you all very much. I'll see you all next week, and I'll see you all in the meantime too. Bye-bye.